Welcome to Mic Drop, the podcast where relevancy is irrelevant and we don't give a shit about your feelings. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to bring to you my next guest to the podcast. He spent 10 years on active duty, starting as infantry for 3 years and then moving over to an interrogator for the last 7 years. He spent 8 deployments, did 2,700 interrogations of prisoners from 25 different countries and over 200 combat raids. He was awarded the Legion of Merit for his actions in Iraq hunting these terrorists. He is the man responsible for breaking Saddam's right-hand man, making his capture possible. He once interrogated Chuck Norris and got him to flip on the Texas Rangers, and after here he's on his way to rough up the suspect and interrogate your fucking mom. Welcome to the stage, Staff Sergeant Eric Maddox.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate you making the trip down here. I know you're a busy guy, and you've been even busier since you got out in 2004, which we just kind of talked a little bit about off air. But I appreciate you coming down. I read your book over the last few days, and I got to tell you, it's like most of the ones I read, absolutely fascinating. And I found myself gleaming a lot of things that I didn't know, even having been in Iraq or parts of the world really close to the same time that you were. So I appreciate you writing the book. I appreciate you coming down here to share your story with us. It's awesome.
My pleasure. Very excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get started, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Origin Labs. They have graciously sponsored the podcast. And they are the maker of all of Jocko's products, as well as a line of supplements of their own, boots, jeans, a whole host of different products, jiu-jitsu gis, etc. So check them out. Thank you to Origin Labs for sponsoring this episode. My daughter wanted to know what your least favorite animal is.
My least favorite?
Your least favorite animal.
The dolphin.
The dolphin?
Overrated.
Is that right?
I'm like, there's...
Do you eat them? You're looking to can dolphin instead of tuna, or what's going on?
I just think they're overrated, and we treat them like we do our own dog, and I'm like, I don't know.
That's interesting. We're going to go get a dolphin melt after this instead of a tuna melt. That's interesting. That's probably a first. I don't think I've ever heard anybody hate the dolphin.
I don't hate the dolphin. I just think that there are some uglier, maybe less... appealing animals that maybe have as kind of a heart as the dolphin.
Yeah, all right. I have some personal experience with dolphins, which I can't get into, but military-wise, but I will say that they can be some mean motherfuckers.
Thank you.
What was your first job as a teenager?
First job was at McDonald's.
McDonald's. What was it like coming to America? You started washing lettuce, and then you'll be on fries, and then, or what did you do?
It was just a learning experience. McDonald's runs like a machine. You put the patties in there and you close it, and they cook them on their own. So you've got to be on time. And I just thought I would work at McDonald's. I get free food, and they keep an eye on a nugget.
Really?
If they don't sell a burger, it's not like, hey, it's been under the heater too long, let's pass this around. They throw it away, and you can't get caught in the trash eating out. I mean, I'm like, come on, we're wasting the hamburger.
I mean, my first job, I was a dishwasher at Village Inn. I used to eat the shit out of food that came in. I mean, I would eat bacon and sausage and half-eaten pancakes. I didn't give a fuck. They didn't give a fuck either. But I do have to ask, did you ever fuck with the food at all? Like, did you ever fucking, like, somebody comes up and is a dick ordering something and you spit in their food or fuck with any of their stuff?
I never did. Matter of fact, I was the opposite, because when I started, they were in one of those cycles of the Monopoly.
Yeah.
Remember the Monopoly?
Oh yeah.
And I would dish those things out because it put joy on their face. You're only supposed to give one per order. I'd give 14 or 15 because I thought, man, I'm making everybody happy. So no, I wasn't messing with your food. And if I was working there, you definitely wanted to go through the drive-thru.
Got hooked up. Did you see anybody fuck with people's food? I always worry about that. I don't eat a lot of fast food anymore, but
I'll tell you this. My brother used to work in restaurants, and he tells me all the time, I mean, he's adamant, do not send anything back. He goes 100% of the time, they're going to mess with your food, and they're going to do something worse than you could ever imagine. He goes, just take it.
Like, do you have an example?
No.
I mean, are they dragging their nuts across your back patty or what?
No, I don't have any examples, man. I appreciate McDonald's giving me the opportunity, so I'm down with some McDonald's.
That's awesome. What's the dumbest pickup line you've ever used?
I don't know. Next question.
They're all good, huh?
No, they're not.
Hard pass?
Hard pass.
All right.
Let's go.
We'll come back to
next
it.
direction.
We'll come back
next
to
one.
it. What's your favorite? This is no bullshit. What is your favorite part of Iraq?
I loved flying in a helicopter 100 feet over. So on the ground, I really didn't like any part of Iraq. I really didn't.
Yeah.
But I was flying from Baghdad to Tikrit. We were 100 feet off the ground. They were staying low. The sun was setting, and in the summer, which was late October, was about to break, and it was the most beautiful, surreal thing I can ever remember. Other than that, I don't have a favorite part of Iraq.
Fair enough. I'm right there with you. That's for damn sure. The worst smelling fucker that you ever interrogated.
Man, I'm going to tell you something right now. When you want to talk about smells, I can tell every single time a service member, a member of the International Red Cross, or an interrogator, I can tell the first time they walk into a military prison, because there's a smell that comes out of those prisons that's shocking.
Yeah.
And it is so bad. It's all body odor and funk and stench without circulation. And to me, I don't want to sound like morbid or anything, but to me, it's the smell of, going to work, right? Like my mouth starts drooling. I'm like, oh, it's home, right?
You're fucking Pavlov over here.
It is, but and I'm not like a brutal person, but that's where you work.
Yeah.
But when that smell hits somebody for the first time, they're in a shock, because it is the worst smell you could ever imagine.
I don't doubt it. I mean, so did any of them stand out as being worse? They're just all fucking bad.
100%. A guy named Faris Yassin, Omar al-Musli.
Did he eat camel shit, or why did he smell so bad?
A lot of these guys are on the run, and maybe they don't have the opportunity to take a shower. He smelled so horrible that I was with this Delta Force team in Crete. They had taken over, Saddam's palace. Their house they were living in had a pool. And I had to go dunk him in the pool.
No shit.
And people are like, so you waterboard? I'm like, this wasn't about torture. This wasn't about, this guy needed to clean up.
I did laundry and pool boarded his ass. God damn, that's fucking nuts. What was his name?
Faris Yassin Omar al-Musli.
I don't know how you remember that shit. Now, you talk about your memory in the book, which we'll get into, but what was his fucking deal in terms of why he was wrapped up and what you were trying to get out of him?
So Faris Yassin was a second circle bodyguard under Saddam Hussein. It was actually his cousin, Mohammed Ibrahim, who was the one who pinpointed Saddam.
Yeah.
So Faris Yassin, we were trying to figure out, which of this Mohammed Ibrahim's family, friends would know where he was, and we had to go wrap up Faris.
Yeah.
And smelled terrible.
So that kind of makes me think, like, do you tell him shit like that? Like, do you fuck with him at all? I mean, there's some examples of exchanges you have in the book where, you're telling people to shut the fuck up and don't play games, stuff like that. But did you ever fuck with them, like almost playing jokes?
Well, I never played a joke with anyone for the purpose of entertainment, right? And I never did anything with the prisoner for the purpose of just irritation. But I certainly did all sorts of psychological games, but it was always for a purpose, right? Like if I was doing something, anybody could come in and go, "What are you doing?" And I tell them I have an exact reason.
Yeah.
So if you want to ask me and waste my time, we can do that. But ask me once if you go, "Oh, so you do have a plan," and it may be a bad plan, it may not work, but I have a plan with every single thing I do with the prisoner. But there's some of the craziest things that you could imagine, and it's about laughing and crying, and I've given prisoners things that'll really get them woken up, right? Like and energized or scared. I have to do it, but I have a plan.
Yeah. Well, so that makes me think of, and leads right into the next question, is obviously everything's super calculated, but there's off-the-cuff moments from the prisoner's standpoint. And some of the other guys, I had James Mitchell on last year that had some kind of funny stories in his book. Were there any instances during an interrogation where, again, coming from kind of their end, that something was really fucking funny. They said they cracked a joke. They said something funny, or just a funny example of an interrogation, or was it all just super dead serious given the nature?
No, there are very funny moments. There are times where you spend so much time with prisoners. So in a 6-month deployment, I'm going to spend 80% of my time FaceTime with the enemy and 20% with my commander or the troop, the ones that I'm supporting. So if you think that you're going to sit in front of the enemy and it's stone cold, there has to be personality. You got to have connections. So I'll tell you a funny one, right? So it was actually an informant. We'd flipped this prisoner and we'd sent him out. And he was kind of our spy. And he wanted to go track down this certain angle of bad guys. And we were really trying to get him focused on this other group of bad guys. And he was being problematic. So he came in and he's asking for money. And I'm like, listen, you need to focus on this group. I don't give a flip about these other people. And he's like, kind of threatening me. And he goes, there's a bounty on your head. And I'm like, really? And my linguist gets really upset. He's like, I know you're being threatening. And I was like, no. I said, how much? He said, $15,000. I'm like, 15,000? Come on.
That's all I'm worth.
We can do better than that. He's like, and so the linguist is like, the 15's disrespectful. Yeah. And the prisoner goes, well, that's more than you're paying me. Meaning, hey, I got a better offer. Yeah. And so my linguist jumps up and gets in the grill of this informant. It's like, disrespectful, don't and the informant looks at my linguist and he said, there's a bounty on your head too. And the linguist is like, Mr. I gotta go. Eric, I gotta leave. I can't stay here.
Yeah, no shit. Well, I mean, I'm assuming that's pretty common. I know, we've had a number of guests on that have given examples of their family members or associates, people they worked with, whatever, getting smoked because they even were suspected of working with Americans, and that's a dirty, shitty spot to be in. But I can only imagine some of the shit that comes out. What was the longest interrogation you ever did straight through?
28 hours.
Straight through, 28
hours.
You heard, that's right, ladies. You heard it. Keep it up for 28 fucking hours.
28 hours. It was Abu Dries and his son Dries, and then his, I think the other son name was Abdullah. So it was a 3-person interrogation, which requires a lot of back and forth and back and forth. But it was 28 hours. 28 fucking hours. Uh-huh. Jesus. I mean, did you obviously you take some breaks, right? You do. So you're taking breaks mainly because your linguists, they all smoke cigarettes. So they got to take a break. And so you take breaks for that, but you're not going to take more than 15 or 20 minutes because you're on a purpose. Like
it's right in the middle of shit.
You get the momentum of a prisoner and you've got to use that momentum against the other prisoners. And you take the army, these guys have pills that they gave me and they just juice you up.
Like Pro-Vigil or what?
Well, I don't know what it was, right? Like, I don't have any idea.
Turns out it was fucking meth, but...
No, I will tell you this. I didn't know what it was, but when I kind of hear people talk about what Ritland is, it sounds to me like it had the same effect that people claim Ritland have on people.
That's interesting. That's awful close to my last name, by the way. Right. Who'd have thought? What is your morning routine when you're in town, not traveling, just kind of day to day?
I get up at 5. I try to listen to a preacher that I respect, and he has a morning. I mean, he's passed away, but they'll put something on each day. I'll go through all my emails. I'll sit outside, and I try to get my mind ready for the day before my kids start waking up, and then it's on. Yeah.
Do you do any type of eating or working out or anything first thing?
Not in the morning.
No.
I don't.
What time do you typically get up?
5.
Yeah. Oh, no shit. You probably already said that. Huh?
Yeah. I get up at 5.
Yeah. Is there an element of something that you're trying to accomplish, or is it just you want to listen to your preacher and spend time with the kids?
Well, I try to so I'm a Christian. I try to get into God's path each day, and I try to get myself kind of armored up for where I want to be as a person. You know, everybody probably, but I know for me, I can get edgy and I can get irritated pretty easily. So I try to just get myself in a place and say, hey, you need to look at everyone. They have a problem. They have things going through in life. So don't just jump in and start ripping things apart. And for me, that's what the morning's about.
Yeah, just kind of collecting yourself. It's I think a good plan of action. I know a lot of shitty situations could probably be avoided with more people doing that, myself included. So, reading in the book, talk a little bit about your background as it relates to your childhood and things. You grew up outside of Tulsa. Could you kind of just describe what your childhood was like, generally speaking?
Sure. I grew up in a small town it's called Sapulpa, Oklahoma. My parents got divorced at a pretty early age. So, kind of grew up with a single mom. She spent a lot of her time going back to school, trying to get her college education so she could provide for my brother and I. Lived a little bit outside of town, and my life was about sports. I have a military career, intel collection career, but Mike, I had no intentions of joining the military. I'm not that guy that joins the military. I love sports, followed sports, and lived a pretty boring, basic life. And until I joined the military.
And then you played football and were a big football fan. Were there any other sports that played a big role in your life?
Football and baseball.
Yeah.
Football and baseball. Those are my two sports. I'm an Oklahoma, so I'm an Oklahoma Sooner fan. And
yeah.
It's a big thing. Well, you were in Texas, so you guys, know the deal.
Yeah, yeah. Why the Sooners over the Cowboys?
I don't know. Yeah. My mom went to OSU. My dad went to Tulsa. And when you're born in Oklahoma under the Barry Switzer era, you're just drawn towards winners. Yeah. And even my parents are huge OU fans. Yeah. So it's just the way it is. Yeah. I cannot explain it, but I cannot imagine anything else.
Yeah. It's neat how you kind of weave in your interest in football in the book a little bit. And it some people may say, God, who gives a fuck, especially if they're not football fans, but I know for me, I grew up being a pretty big Iowa Hawkeye fan, and just that sense of some normalcy and connection back home provides a lot of kind of mental stress relief, I think, when you're in those environments and kind of paying attention to what's going on. But I liked how that was woven in there.
Mike, what I thought was important for me, and I think it is for a lot of people, is when you see something that you can relate to that is very communal, right? Like a college football game or a Saturday, and you think about how many hundreds of thousands, even millions of people are at a football game on a Saturday, and they're in a place of normalcy. Then you're in a place of chaos. But for me, it was like, that's okay, right? This is why we fight and put ourselves in this so they can have that at the same moment.
Yeah.
And for me, I needed to see it because no matter how bad the day was in Iraq, it was like, it's all right. Look what they get.
Yeah.
They get that.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was the importance of those, putting that in my book.
Yeah. No, it definitely brings solace, whatever you're into back home, having that link to that communal aspect, like you said, is a big fucking deal. Were there any instances in childhood that were kind of big ticket items that had a significant impact? I'm assuming you talk about being adopted and basically your parents didn't keep that from you. What kind of an impact did that have on you growing up, if any?
Well, if you're adopted, it's going to have an impact on you, right? And there's different ways that parents handle that. And my parents were straight up, right? Like I don't ever remember time not being known that I was adopted. And for me, I looked at it like my parents chose to go to all this effort to go get me, right? They didn't just get pregnant. Not that people do just get pregnant, but a lot of people just get pregnant.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, we can't get pregnant. So let's go fight for this child. And even if they got divorced, I never felt like that I was a mistake or that so that was for one thing. But the reason I put that story in my book was I was told my entire life, you can't go find your biological mother, right? Back in the 70s and 80s, you couldn't. It's not like today.
Yeah. So it was more of a logistics. You won't be able to, we're not going to allow it.
They couldn't have helped me find
I
it.
got you.
They had even said, we couldn't help you if we wanted to.
Yeah.
It's not an option.
Yeah.
And therefore, don't fret over it.
Yeah.
It's not anything. And for me, I was like, I'm not fretting. I don't care. I got parents. But don't tell me I can't go find them.
Yeah. I'll give you every reason to go find them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were in high school, as you transition and do decide, what was the motivation to serve? And, tell us about that mental process that you went through to actually decide, since it wasn't something you had thought about previous.
So I never crossed my mind in high school. And I graduated, went to University of Oklahoma. Never crossed my mind. And I'm going into my senior year at OU, and I like to run. I'm a jogger, and I'm out on my path, and I had a calling, right? I mean, it was straight up, wasn't a verbal voice, but I had something that basically said, go join the military. And stopped in my tracks, went to the recruiter, and next day I signed up. So it was literally a calling. And I know it was a calling because anyone who knows me will know I'd never shot a gun before, never been hunting. I'm not the Army type. I don't have military history, a ton of it in my family. So that was it. I finished my career at OU. I graduated and enlisted in the Army.
So what was it about him or what he said that was the turning point?
To join?
Yeah.
There was nothing that was said other than the clarity of which the message was said. And it was not a verbal message. I instantaneously knew I got to go join the Army.
Like you saw this guy and were inspired just by seeing him?
No. It was a voice. I didn't see anybody. I didn't see anyone. I'm just jogging along. And I had this feeling of, dude, you got to go join the Army.
God, that's crazy.
So there was not a person. It wasn't a voice.
I figured like you're running, like you ran into a fucking recruiter or something.
No. I had a feeling.
Yeah.
And I went to the recruiter, and I didn't know what an airborne ranger was. Right? Mm-hmm. And I said, I think I'm supposed to become an airborne ranger. And you want to talk about recruiter? No, the recruiter didn't help at all. He looks at me and he said, no, man, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. You can't fucking make it.
No, well, this wasn't an infantry recruiter.
They do that shit.
Right? He was like, whoa.
Yeah. The Navy
he had a
recruiters do that
dip
shit.
in. It was 40 pounds overweight. He was like, no.
Yeah. Did you, back to the adoption thing just real quick before we get into the military career early on, did you try to find your birth parents or your birth mom in high school, or was it after you joined?
It was while I was in college.
Okay.
So it was after my sophomore year at the University of Oklahoma.
Just like a little bit before you joined.
Yeah, so I joined when I graduated from OU, when I was 22.
Okay.
I found my biological mother when I was 20.
Yeah, and you describe in detail kind of how that went in the book. The one thing that struck me a little bit is that, for the listener that hasn't read it, you find the house and you kind of track it down through, some basic library detective work.
Yep.
But you roll up and you see this older woman who turns out to be your grandma.
Yeah.
I found it striking that while I understand her daughter was in whatever position she was in to make that decision to give you up for adoption, I would find it hard to be a grandparent of somebody who I find out is now my grandson and be that kind of nonchalant and casual about just letting you fucking not come in and just be like, yeah, whatever.
That's a great observation. And that's exactly what she did. I don't know, man. Maybe life's just not like the movies.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're supposed to break down and cry. She was just living her life, and she was a sweet lady.
Yeah.
She had a rough life. Things had not gone easy, right? And maybe it was I've been scarred up enough, or I've been calloused up enough to where this just didn't touch me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Glad you're doing good, man. Looks good. Come on in. Once you grab a glass of ice water, I'm gonna bring out some pictures and when my biological uncle, so it would be my biological mother's brother, stumbles in not stumbles, but come across the house, it was this, the mother said, guess who this is? This is the one so-and-so give up. This is the one Debbie give up. Like, it's a thing, not a person.
Yeah.
So it was just a removal of that personal thing that maybe you'd expect on a movie. But that's just life.
I mean, because to me, obviously, you're not in your mom's life, but your mom was obviously in your grandmother's life the entire time. So again, just putting myself in your grandmother's shoes, like if I have a child that gave somebody up for adoption and they showed up, like I would take a little more vested interest in that. It just seemed a very odd response. But at any rate, I was just wondering if that had crossed your mind or if you had any perspective on that. But
oh yeah, it crossed my mind.
Yeah, that's and nothing since, right? Like you haven't reached out and
Well, because of my job, like I know exactly where she lives.
Yeah.
So I always keep a tab on my mother, my biological mother. I mean, that grandmother, that lady, she passed away 15 months ago.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of follow that. I follow them.
Yeah.
But I don't make contact because I don't want to mess with them.
Yeah. Do they have any idea what you've done?
No.
No idea?
None.
Yeah. I mean, would they even know your name to know that it was you? Or
No.
Probably not, yeah.
Now, I told the grandmother and I gave her my contact information, but I was never reached out by the mother.
Yeah.
I know she has a son that was 3 years after me, right? And I kind of joke, I'm like, well, it must have been a keeper, right? So, but I don't want, if she didn't tell that son, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to make that a difficult situation for her.
No, that makes sense. It's a hard experience to imagine going through, for anybody that didn't have that.
Man, I just want to say one thing. It's not that hard if you got great adopted parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what makes it really simple.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a thing, man.
Yeah.
It's just blood. It's DNA.
Yeah.
It's nothing else.
Yeah. No, it's a good perspective on it for sure. All right, so you go into the Army, and there's a buddy named Casey that you look up to that, was just a little bit ahead of you, which I found kind of funny and ironic in that I had a similar situation, but I was the Casey in this case. My buddy Matt, I joined. We had originally talked about being Rangers together, and my parents were pretty dead set against me being in the Army. They would rather the Navy, which is kind of funny because I end up doing basically the same shit anyway. But at any rate, I joined about 6 months before he did or so. And he went up being a Ranger and then went on to be in Delta and was in Iraq there. But it's just kind of funny reading the same kind of a similar scenario. But interestingly, your friend Casey ends up passing away unexpectedly. What do you know? What happened?
Sure. So his name was Casey Binion. He was a year older than me. Joined about a year before I did. Ranger. Special Forces, was teaching at the SWIC at the time of his death, and he died just before we invaded Iraq, and he just died in his sleep, and he had heart kind of murmur, heartbeat. I don't know what that means, right? The engine just would miss a beat once in a while, and he just didn't wake up.
Yeah.
So, but he and I grew up together. Smart dude, man.
Yeah.
I mean, genius smart.
How did that impact you in your career?
His impact for me was really the first 10 years, first part of my career. I'm always chasing this guy. And it's not negative, right? Like, I wish he would have been king of the world. I wasn't hoping he would slow down so I could catch him. But you're still chasing, right? You're still like, dang, they did that. I got to do this. And what's funny is whenever our paths would cross in the military, all he would do is grab people and brag about me.
Yeah.
Chinese Mandarin, man, look at this. Look. And I'm like, dude, you're the guy. So it was this great relationship of mutual respect.
Yeah.
And then when he died, right before I went to Iraq, for me, it was like kind of talking to your guardian angel.
Yeah.
Literally. Because you're, like I said, 80% of your time with these prisoners, I'm not Delta Force, right? I don't claim to be. I'm attached to them, so I'm not one of them. So who am I hanging out with, right? Not the prison. I mean, so for me, it was that relationship, even though he's dead, that I'm talking to him as I'm going through this really difficult deployment. I know that. I don't know if that sounds weird, but that's how
No, not at all. I mean, I think how else can you maximize the remembrance of somebody than something like that? I don't know that you can. I think it's a great way to honor his memory. And it's I can't imagine having that happen. It's just such a kind of a fluke mishap type of thing that it's one thing to be killed in action or even in an accident, but something like that so unexpected is tough. So you spend 3 years infantry, and then you go to interrogator school. What can you share about that? I know that there's probably a lot of it that you can't, but could you kind of cliff notes the experience in being trained at that base level to be a military interrogator?
Sure. Okay, so I'm 3 years infantry. Love the idea of a foreign language. Went and took the foreign language aptitude test. Did really well, and they said you can take any language you want. I said I want to learn Chinese Mandarin, and my goal was to become a Chinese Mandarin linguist. They said, well, you got to have an MOS, and there's really two in the Army. You can either be a SIGINT, 98 Golf, which means you're going to sit and listen, or they said you could do interrogations, and they said don't worry, it's the 90s, right? You'll never do interrogation. You'll never do one.
Yeah.
So I picked interrogation. So the real chore was getting through language school. You do 17 months of language school, and then it's 8 weeks of interrogation training, and they even said you can't flunk the interrogation school. So you go through this training that you're not even worried about.
You can't flunk it?
Maybe you could if you had a disciplinary attitude, but we didn't. In the 90s, they didn't make you interrogators to be interrogators. We needed linguists.
Yeah.
We needed Chinese and Russian. We had a language issue.
Okay.
We didn't have any prisoners.
So, I mean, what about for even if you pass from an aptitude standpoint, but you're struggling with the language, they're basically just going to get you through it?
No. They're not going to get you through the language course.
Just
the language course, you had better pass. You've got to be proficient at the language. What I'm saying is, once you pass the language course,
I got you.
They needed you to have an MOS.
Yeah.
But the first couple of years out of interrogation course, I was a Chinese Mandarin linguist.
Yeah. Okay.
I was an intel collector, but there were no interrogations.
No, I got you. That makes sense. So just focusing on what the important thing, and then once that's there, it's doing what they have to for you to be able to apply that skill set.
You're an intelligence collection officer.
Yeah.
With a language skill.
Yeah. Okay.
We didn't have prisoners till 9/11.
Yeah. All right. So you're in Arizona at that point. You end up getting married, have 2 kids, divorced, and essentially go all in operationally after that. I won't dig too heavy in your background there, but what I guess more importantly, like, how's the relationship with your kids and ex, and how are things now? How did that kind of go down?
Sure. I got married in 2000, and immediately had a son, my son Joe. Joe just graduated high school. Just this week started his first year at Arizona State University.
Oh, nice.
Almost a full scholarship. He's a smart little guy. He's an engineer, going into engineering. So he's at ASU. He's a freshman. My other son, Eric Marshall, is a junior in Gilbert. Whatever reasons, I'm not going to go too much into my failed marriage, but I will say this. In 3.5 years, I did 5 deployments, and the marriage was shot.
Yeah.
So I, not making any excuses whatsoever, and certainly wasn't my ex-spouse's problem. But it is a tough gig once you kind of get you jump into these deployments, and they get really intense, because it's just hard to come back and reassimilate.
Do you get along with your ex now?
I think so.
She doesn't, but I do.
No, I think we have a very good relationship, right? Like, I'll say this, when I go visit my children, the boys, I stay at her house.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And we're cool. Yeah. So, I think that it is good as it's mutual respect.
Yeah, if you're staying there, it can't be too fucking bad. How, in terms of your role and relationship with your sons, I am curious, with the amount of time that you were gone and operating and active on behalf of Uncle Sam, do you feel like you still have that super strong father-son relationship, or is it a little more hit and miss?
That's a great question. I would say the first 10 years of their lives, I failed to build that relationship as you would want from like a small child to a parent. I would say I failed in that I didn't realize the importance of it. And really, it's been the work of my younger son, my 16-year-old, over the last 6, 7, 8 years that's come to me and said, you have to work on our relationship. And he's a smart young man, and he's actually helped me establish what I would call, I love my relationship with my sons now, but he's done it. And he had to teach me some lessons really hard to swallow. Like, he had to really tell me, we don't know you. We don't trust you. You're not listening. Like, things that I preach.
Yeah.
And when you hear that from your son, you're like, man, you're a smart kid, and I got to listen to you. So really, he's helped me rebuild my relationship with my sons. It wasn't bad. It was just almost non-existent. It was like a cool uncle.
So it was more of he kind of completed that process.
He definitely pushed it from being a cool uncle, dad that's not around but shows up and always pays child support and buys you stuff, but he's not somebody you can lean on to
talk to and all that.
Man, we have a great relationship.
Yeah. No, that's awesome to hear. Is your oldest son that's at Arizona State, is that scholarship academic?
Oh yeah. He's not. I mean, he's
shout out to your oldest son. Huh?
No, listen, I'm so proud of him because let me tell you something. He's a brutal athlete, but he lettered in 4 sports his senior year.
Oh no shit.
And was captain of the wrestling team. Made state twice in wrestling.
Oh wow.
You didn't see it from the get-go,
Yeah.
and he's one of those kids that just sticks with it.
Yeah.
But no, it's an academic scholarship.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. 9/11 happens not long after that.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to ask, especially when it's operationally involved, describe the day of 9/11 from your perspective.
9/11, 2001. I'm an intelligence collection officer, all Chinese, focused all Chinese in Los Angeles, California. People come in from China. That's part of my mission for the government military is to tap into their world and answer questions for the Department of Defense. 9/11 happens, and we get all pulled into the office. And from that moment on, you're off Chinese. You're off whatever. You're off satellites. You're off anything. It is. I'm sorry. What's Al Qaeda? And I'm embarrassed to say that. But I wasn't a CT focused guy. I wasn't a Middle East guy. I didn't know who Bin Laden was.
Yeah.
I just didn't. So everybody was redirected towards CT, Al Qaeda, Middle East, and there you go.
So you mentioned, speaking Chinese and being focused on that way back then. Here we are almost 20 years later, and they've kind of resurfaced as being, we'll call it a pseudo problem, or at least,
Sure.
an area of concern internationally. What, not to get too off tangent, but before we dive into all the sexiness of the book, what's your take on the Chinese-American relationship right now, given your background?
I think it's about, here's the deal. We had to stand up to them. And I understand the tariffs can be problematic for a lot of people who, the open trade or the previous non-tariff situation, it was something that they learned to adapt to. You have to stand up to the Chinese. What you've got to understand about Chinese culture is they have such little respect for law, right? That's why you deal with piracy. They do not care. Patent office in China, good luck on that, right? So you've got to stand up to them. They'll look straight in you in the eye and lie to you if they have to. And they can almost pass that off because they're a nonviolent culture. So you're like, they're not criminals. They're not violent criminals.
Do you mean nonviolent militarily? Because they seem pretty fucking brutal society-wise.
Well, that is at a government level. That's not part of culturally who they are. But at a government level, they remove all humanity to get the job done. So if there's a situation and at Tiananmen Square, we're just squashing it.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, you got to admit, there's not a lot of terrorism going on in China.
Yeah.
And that Hong Kong situation is going to last a little while,
Yeah.
right up to the point to where they're done with it.
Yeah.
And then they will squash that thing like a bug.
Yeah. No, I know they have a basically a zero tolerance attitude towards any fucking bullshit, which I can appreciate in many respects. But I guess, my curiosity in terms of your level of expertise toward them, and I know it hasn't been your focus necessarily, but do you think that they're a huge threat, both militarily, technology-wise, foreign policy-wise? Like, do you think they're as big of a threat as I think some people in our media make them out to be?
So, Mike, I am under the belief that the true threats that we face as a country are going to be economic threats, cybersecurity threats.
From them.
Well, from them,
Yeah.
right? I do not worry about China instigating what would be a conventional war, because the impact of that war will be 100-fold on the global economy. And unless they just get a complete tyrant idiot in power, such as would be North Korea, Iran, right? Those would be some leadership that would be willing to sacrifice the global economy. But what you have to deal with China is they do want to take us down, and they're trying to do it globally, and they will try to force us into what would be a former Soviet Union situation, to where they're trying to make us go bankrupt through pushing our military, right? So if you see where their navies come in the last 20 years, those guys couldn't float across a lake 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And now
They
are coming, which forces us to have to look at that.
What is the primary one or two ways that they are quote unquote coming after us?
The increase in their navy. Mm-hmm. Okay, their situation in Hong Kong, Taiwan, right? Movement. They're gaining even strength in southern Pacific, into areas like Australia, and always they're always attempting to steal our technology.
Yeah. What about from a cyber standpoint? Do you think that they're behind and responsible for a lot of the hacking attacks of just disrupting like some of the airline stuff and shit like that? Or do you think that's more of a Russia thing?
Man, I'll tell you what's in my zone and what's not. That's out of my lane.
Yeah.
I can't answer smartly to that.
Sure. No, I appreciate the honesty. All right, so back on track with, so 9/11 happens. You refocus all of your attention on now Middle East, things that were outside your wheelhouse. What took place between 9/12 and Iraq kicking off for you?
Made a deployment to Bosnia, Herzegovina for 6 months, really having to deal with the transition from wow, these Serbs are pretty brutal, to, hey, maybe these Bosniaks are crazy, and maybe that there's some radical Islamic elements that are filtering into the group of this kind of threesome that split up the former Yugoslavia that we need to be aware of, right? Yeah. So that infiltration of radical Islam in the former Soviet Union really made us have to turn and look at what we quote were our friends, right? So we did that. Then I did a deployment that was a pre-build-up to the war in Iraq that was dealing with, we were trying to build Iraqis outside of Iraq to kind of form their own army. It was called the Free Iraqi Force. And we had to do a huge train up in Eastern Europe. Well, we had to go in there and make sure that we didn't have any pro-Saddam loyalists. So it was kind of an intel thing. And that was right up, actually through the war. And then I'm told, hey, we're good, man. You're straight going back to Chinese stuff. That's what I was told. And then I came down on orders to go.
So here, that makes me think of, post 9/11, the focus is on, Middle East, Islam extremism, Al Qaeda, bin Laden, et cetera. And Iraq is spooling up. Why the focus on Bosnia? Was it because there was the potential Muslim element, or what? Like, where the fuck was the redirect on that?
Man, I'll be honest. The redirect was anyone who spoke Arabic or Farsi or Pashto, you were going to the big wars.
Yeah.
Chinese Mandarin, we don't really care. You're not that important right now, Eric.
Yeah.
Can you go cover down on Bosnia for a minute? I mean, it was embarrassing. I was like,
So it was more of a backfill thing.
we get total backfill. Let's send the Chinese guy
Yeah.
to the former Yugoslavia. So let's not, I wasn't that proud
Yeah.
to feel that mission.
Yeah. No, I'm tracking. I mean, that fucking welcome to the military. I mean, that shit happens all over the SEAL community as well, where you're supposed to go somewhere and then you end up going somewhere way less fucking cool and what have you. But
Yep.
all right, so early 03, Iraq spools up and kicks off, and you end up, you start off, it sounds like, at Biop in Baghdad, and then you end up in Tikrit. Can you walk us through that first portion of landing in country and up until you get up into Tikrit, which we'll focus heavy on?
Sure. So when I got orders in at the beginning of July, they said, you're going to the BIOP. But these orders were very classified, right?
That's Baghdad International Airport
Sorry
for you
about
civilian
that.
assholes.
Baghdad International Airport. But
Which has a
they
great
couldn't
gift shop, by the way.
tell me the unit, which that doesn't happen, right? Like, you don't know who you're going there with. And then when I get to DC, they're like, hey, man, we think you might be going with the guys that are tracking down the deck of cards. And I said, well, what can you tell me? They're like, we can't tell you anything because we don't know. Just, you're going to get on this plane, but we're telling you, we think that's where you're going. Like, all right, there's no reason they would pick me. I've never done an interrogation before. I'm a Chinese Mandarin linguist. So I show up, and I mean, sure thing. You're picked up by guys in civilian clothes, full beards, and they take me into this little bitty compound, and they're like, have you heard of Task Force 121? I'm like, no. Or 120 or 119. Like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
And we go in, and it's the interrogators, and they kind of crack open the door. When I loaded the plane was July 23rd. The news had broke that there was a suspicion that Uday and Qusay Hussein, Saddam's two sons, had just been killed.
Yeah.
So I get on the plane going, that's interesting. I wonder if that happened. Get off the plane, picked up by these people, and the first in briefing, they kind of crack the door, and there's their bodies.
No shit.
No shit. They're right there. Look, and I'm like, ooh, I just got sent to the cool guys zone. Like, oh, this is awesome.
Dude, that's fucking legit.
I don't even want to tell them. I've never actually done an interrogation before. I hope they don't care.
How the fuck did they not know that? I mean, is it?
Hey, come on.
I mean, goddamn, like that.
Okay, let me ask you this. When 9/11 hits, before 9/11, you know how many interrogators have done interrogations before?
I mean, almost none.
Zero.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that period of at least saying, okay, we know the guys that we're bringing in here, we know their backgrounds at a minimum and what they have, what they don't have.
But my background, the reason they took me was because my infantry background, and I graduated Ranger School.
Okay.
Because the idea was they're going to push us out to the teams.
They want you to actually go with them on something.
Well, they want to make sure you know how to not act like an idiot.
Yeah.
You understand what, weapon security,
Yeah.
just basic things are.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
So I asked, I said, what am I doing here? And they're like,
Yeah.
dude, you graduated Ranger School.
Yeah.
You were infantry.
No, I mean, to me, that's an important dot to connect for those listening that have no military experience. I mean, granted, like that's a very good bridge to why you were there, but there are plenty of examples in your response of, come on, tells me and everybody listening, if they can read between the lines a little bit, that the military is awful goddamn disorganized in some ways, which we'll talk about in terms of how long you were supposed to be in Tikrit versus, all that. But so heavy on the, you got infantry experience, you've been to Ranger School. It makes sense for you to be with some of these more tier 1 type units. What was that process like leading up to, from when you saw those bodies and realized, holy shit, I'm with the cool guys? How long did how long transpired between then and when you ended up in Tikrit for what was supposed to be 48 hours?
It was 3 days.
Oh, no shit.
Maybe it was 4. I know I didn't sleep because you're so jazzed up. I was so excited. I've been in the military for 9 years. I've never been into a real combat zone. You can call Bosnia what you want, but
yeah. Well, if you're Hillary Clinton, you took some heavy shit. That's a whole nother story. Get her on the fucking podcast.
Yeah, but this was the first time I'm like, thank goodness. I don't have to live I don't have to live the rest of my life saying I didn't go, right? So I'm juiced. And they asked, would you be willing to go out with the teams on their raids? And I'm like, sure, absolutely. Yeah. So there are teams out there, right? Mm-hmm. And there are areas where everyone assumes Saddam is. The assumption was he's in Baghdad.
Yeah,
I'm telling you. So the current interrogators, there are like 5 of them, they wanted to go on the missions with Baghdad. The last thing they wanted to do to go to Tikrit. Tikrit team calls, so we're going on a mission tonight. Can we get an interrogator? And they're like, yeah, we got the guy for you.
Yeah.
So they said, hey, you're going up to Tikrit. I'm like, awesome. This will be great.
Yeah.
Dumb Chinese Mandarin linguist is taking the stupid mission in Tikrit. And they said, all right, you'll be home tomorrow. Well, I knew I wanted to stay. I didn't know if I was gonna stay, but I knew I wanted to. So I went up there in the middle of the night, and quickly, within an hour, we're leaving the wire and we're going on a raid. And it was everything I wanted it to be, right? Like it was
right out of the fucking movie.
It was right out of the movie. It was stupidity. There were definitely some miscommunications. It certainly wasn't the team's fault, but there were miscommunications on driving through sectors of military. You know, we got lit up by a 4th ID 50 cal.
Yeah.
I mean, and then when we go in the house, the guy opens up an AK, and he said, "Well, I thought it was being robbed." So you're like, I mean, we're not dealing with a war here. We're dealing with a guy who thinks he's being robbed.
Yeah.
So it's all this stupid stuff. But we went from 1 to the 2nd to the 3rd. So we did 3 raids in one night.
Yeah. Were you using the intel and actionable shit that you gathered from raid 1 to hit raid 2?
It kind of. So I got to be honest, I'm not sure what intel we were using to hit house 1 because I just got there.
Yeah.
But it was definitely an informant, and it was a cluster, right? Like we went to a house of a former regime member. People, they'd already been to the house.
Yeah.
Now, once we were there, a nephew of that guy said, "Oh, no, I know where his real house is."
Yeah.
So it was.
Yeah.
So we go there. Well, guess what? We'd already been there too.
Yeah.
So we're going on raids of places that the military had already been, and the likelihood that person would return to was almost nil.
Yeah. Okay. If you could talk about kind of the initial phase into that from a timeline standpoint, because just for the kind of context of the listener, this is in summertime of 03.
This is July 28th, 2003, when I get to Iraq. Okay.
And then just so that the reader knows, everything that we're going to talk about for the next however long, couple of days probably, is the span from that time until December 13th, which is when Saddam was caught. So just for reference for the listener.
All right, Mike. So I get to Tikrit. We go on those 3 missions. Next day, I'm told this, well, you're going back to Baghdad. The team that was there had an operator. His name's Jeff White. And Jeff said, you know what? I am the liaison. Jeff said, Jeff's the liaison between the team and agency's case officer. And Jeff had it with agency. I don't know if you experienced this, but
yeah, I would never do business
unit
with.
And the agency do not get along out there because
Yeah.
There's a dispute in each of their minds on who's in charge.
Yeah. Who's got the bigger dick?
That's exactly right. So I was not, I wasn't a threat. And Jeff was so irritated with the agency, and he hated their sources. He hated their informants, that he said, you know, we got a bunch of prisoners. What do you say you and I start doing interrogations? I'm like, sure. What are you? He goes, man, I can't trust these jackasses. I guarantee they're reporting stuff up the chain. They're not telling us, right? Same old stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, yeah. So Jeff told his boss, by the way, this guy ain't leaving. That was it. I didn't leave.
Yeah.
So I start doing interrogations. Jeff White, the operator's sitting in. And from that moment is sort of when I began the interrogations. And then Jeff's also sitting in all agency meetings, the operator.
Yeah.
So he's coming to me going, hey, by the way, here's what the agency's working on. So I'm getting fed that. And that was the beginning, right? That was the beginning of my interrogation career.
Yeah.
And I had an advocate in this operator, Jeff. And I didn't quite understand what true actionable intelligence was. Like, I didn't know the fidelity that was needed to give, but he loved the way I questioned, and he liked the way that I pieced things together.
Yeah. Do you still talk to him at all?
He's one of my best friends.
No shit.
Yeah, we're actually doing an event together on
cool.
September 11th in D.C.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hearing you start to explain that process, it made me think back to, again, I get why they sent you up there in terms of, your background with infantry and going through Ranger School, pushing them out to that unit. But I am curious if kind of the general consensus of the country as it relates to the intelligence agencies, et cetera, we're all relatively or primarily convinced that Saddam was in the Baghdad area. Why, I get that you're not Arabic speaker and whatever, but why bring you in country and push you out to somewhere where they think he's not there?
Well, they didn't know where he was. They thought he was in Baghdad. And looking back on it, I'm convinced that they get intelligence from where their sources to gather intelligence exist.
Yeah.
The majority of agency case officers were in Baghdad.
Yeah.
So it was the draw there. Now, there was already a team in Tikrit, but I can tell you that team was seeking to relocate.
To Baghdad. Yeah.
Anywhere else.
Anywhere.
And here's how I know the task force knew didn't think he was in Tikrit. Halfway through my tour in Tikrit, there was one agency case officer. He got shot. It was stupid. It was a 203.
That's
frag.
Roy, right? Roy, the team guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't his real name. But yeah. A little fragment goes in. He had to go exploratory. Agency had 50 case officers in country. Mm-hmm. They couldn't replace one in Tikrit.
Yeah, because they just didn't give a fuck.
No, because he said he wasn't in Tikrit.
Oh, I gotcha.
If you're looking for the most wanted guy in the world,
yeah,
and you have 50 case officers and you won't put one?
Well, that's what I mean. They didn't give a fuck because they didn't think he was there. But two questions. Was there actionable intelligence or corroborated enough intelligence to give them the idea that he was in Baghdad, or was it just he must be here because it's Baghdad?
They did so many raids every single day in Baghdad that they could. The problem is when a raid was wrong, the team would drop the prisoners with the interrogators. What you never saw, at least the 4 days I was there, is the team or whoever. There was never a conduit that would say, "Let us know why it went wrong." Mm-hmm. It was you just were told, "We didn't get the PC, the precious cargo.
Yeah.
Tell us what to do with these prisoners. Are they innocent? Let's release them, or should they go to Abu Ghraib?"
Yeah, because if you know why you fucked up, that's as important as
then
the success.
Know that. If you know why you screwed up, then you know that informant's not reliable.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was such a disconnect between the agency running the informants, the team doing the hits, and the follow-up of the interrogators saying, "Hey, this was just the wrong guy.
Yeah.
What happened?"
Yeah, no, that makes sense. The other question I had, and I don't know if you know or can speak to it, once he was caught, is there a general consensus or idea of, from this March 17th, the day that the war kicked off, what his path was from when he went underground? Is that known?
I know what it was.
Can you share that?
Yeah. He was hiding in the Tikrit area. He'd stayed at one house.
So right away he fled up to Tikrit?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes. Shit.
Yes.
So he was up there the whole fucking time. He wasn't bouncing around and
no.
Yeah.
He was one of 3 farms in Tikrit.
The whole goddamn time.
Yes.
Oh shit.
Now, would I tell you what he would do? So I don't know if anybody's watching, or you can see, but if you look at the town of Tikrit, okay, there's a river. The Tigris River runs right.
It's on YouTube, assholes. Go to YouTube and watch it.
But it runs right through the middle of the city. Yeah. Well, on the west side of the city is where the people are, and on the east side of the city is where the farmland is.
Yeah.
There's one single bridge that goes across.
Mm-hmm. And you can see it from the rooftop of the Tikrit Palace, correct?
Oh, you can see it from it's right there.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So you know what I'm talking about, right? Well, if all U.S. forces are over here, because this is where the population is, he was pretty free to navigate through here, especially after curfew.
Yeah.
So he would look, they'd drive him around. And if they saw somebody on the side of the road, they'd pick him up, give him a ride. And he would say, stay with the fight, believe we're coming back. But he kept his presence in the rumor mill of these people enough to go, he ain't gone.
Yeah.
Don't think he's gone.
Where they'd protect him and, you know.
Or just don't think, if you really are if you're putting all eggs in the American basket,
Yeah.
I'm not gone yet.
Yeah.
And they were scared to death of this guy.
Yeah. He had enough of an iron fist to just that little bit of.
But he was in this zone of the eastern side of the river all 9 months.
Yeah. It's interesting because, we'll talk about my experiences in Tikrit, but, I was really fucking close to where he was then, which is interesting. We'll get into that here in a minute. So as soon as you get into your first interrogation, which I'm assuming was a follow-on from the triple raid first night or very soon after.
Yeah.
I thought that it was really neat, the kind of the synopsis that you provide of the after action, the things that you learned. And you end up, the guy that you interrogate is a nephew of Saddam, a bodyguard nephew of Saddam. Mm-hmm. If you could explain who he was and the importance of him.
So in the very first person was a guy named Rafi Idham Ibrahim. And when you say nephew, you'd be careful to say it wasn't like Saddam's brother's kid, right?
It's not like a nephew here.
It's a distant relative, but Saddam trusted only members of his family. All of his bodyguards were from Tikrit, and Saddam had, I'm going to say, probably at one time, at any given time, he'd have 200 bodyguards. But he had inner circle, middle circle, and third. Well, this was a second circle. He said he was third, but he was a second circle bodyguard. And he knew the dynamics of a social network, which was Saddam's bodyguard network, that could not be explained by rank. It's just, there were family ties and connections that gave the power. Now, he didn't lay that out for me, but it was clear this nobody, he was a nobody.
Yeah.
He had information that we could need. At that time, I wasn't good enough an interrogator to get it really out of him yet.
Yeah. You talk about, your lessons learned from that first interrogation. I want to read the first excerpt from your book that I pulled out as I thought it was pretty apt to the conversation. You say, as I sat alone at the table, I reviewed all the mistakes I had made over the last several hours. I had asked unnecessary questions, let Rafi see where I was going before I got there, lost my temper when I should have stayed calm, and vice versa. I now had first-hand experience in some of the many ways to screw up an interrogation. I couldn't tell myself that I wouldn't make the same mistake twice, but at least I knew what the mistakes were. Slowly, I was beginning to learn how to keep the details straight, how to close out the paths of evasion, and how not to let a prisoner see the traps I was laying for him. I was beginning to understand not just how to ask questions, but why I was asking the questions. Raw information was less important than what the information told me about the prisoner I was questioning, what he was thinking, what he was afraid of, and what he had to hide. The point wasn't just to catch him in a lie. I would quickly come to realize that what most of my prisoners told me were lies. It was the reason they were lying that was important. To me, there's a shit ton of insight that can be gained from just that paragraph in terms of, the hands-on applicability of an interrogation. And to me, the most important part of that is the reason why they were lying. What they're lying about. It's what they're trying to protect. Not just catching them in that, but the context around it. Can you speak to that paragraph and how powerful that first interrogation was? So people always think you caught them in a lie. You caught them in a lie. So what? They're already captured. Like, what am I going to do? Increase their prison sentence? Like, they don't care, and there's no evidence. If you don't have hard evidence, so what if you catch them in a lie? So you catch them in a lie. So you go, great, I caught them in a lie. But the point is, why do people lie? Why do they lie? There's either a lack of trust with the person they're talking to. Well, there's definitely a lack of trust. Okay, why don't they trust me? Because they don't think I'm going to help them?
Because some people will go, wait a second, I'm going to lie about everything because I don't know what this guy wants to know, but anything he asks, I can't tell the truth. Well, then that's across the board line. Or is it, I'm going to tell this guy the truth, except for pieces of information I have to lie about to what? Protect my family? Protect my story of being innocent? Like, if you don't ask these questions, then it doesn't matter what you catch anybody in a lie with. So what am I going to do with it? I'm going to use that lie against them. So now I have to figure out, what are their leverage points? What's the hope that I can create? Now, once you realize you have to create hope, now you can use the lie, right? So then you have to say, wait a second, what hope do you give a prisoner? Because I'm telling you, in these type of insurgent wars, where there's no uniforms, if you do not create hope, you cannot succeed as an interrogator. Now, once you get the hope, now you can use the lie and go, wait a second. Now I can use that as leverage on their hope.
Yeah. To me, there's some brilliant elements of psychology that exist in interrogation that I find fascinating, especially because of the parallels between dog training and the psychological aspect of it. When those people are in your custody, and at that point in the war, was there kind of an understanding on all of the people that you were interrogating in terms of they knew what you guys could do and couldn't do, and so they knew where to push, or were they still kind of, fuck, are these guys like the Iranians or the Soviets where they're going to cut our balls off and shove them in our mouth? What kind of challenges did you run into in terms of them understanding the ROEs as well as you did?
Well, they didn't know. They truly didn't know what was going to happen to them.
So they were probably more scared.
Oh, they're very, very scared. But you got to understand, when you claim to be at war, all right, so we invaded, and we're taking on Saddam. He had an army. And when you go capture somebody at their home in civilian clothes, and they don't have a weapon at their house, and they know there's no explosives, they are going to look at you and go, I'm just a normal civilian. Because there's plausible deniability, because there are normal civilians who are not involved. They're automatic. I don't care how bad you torture them. I don't care how bad you scare them. I don't care what Iranians have done to them in the past. Why would you not claim innocence, a plausible deniability of being an innocent civilian?
Yeah.
Why would you not?
Yeah. No, I mean, for sure you wouldn't. I guess I was more curious there was a transition that took place there, later on, but as they became more and more familiar and aware of what our right and left flanks were, of what we could do, what we could not do, there's no question they exploited that.
So Mike, what you're referring to, though, is, you're right. Once they determine that, but you're also talking about the loyalists, the foreign fighters, the ones who declared, who basically said, I'm going to fight and I'm not coming home. They knew those things. I'm going to argue in these insurgency wars, I could care less about a foreign fighter. Now, they'll blow themselves up and they're loyal to the cause. They don't have the intel that's going to take anything down. Yeah. It's the facilitators. The facilitators have all the critical pieces of information. Yeah. So, you know what? I always say, let the cool, if you think you're a cool interrogator, you take all the suicide bombers. You take those. Yeah. I'm going to take the driver and the facilitator and the guy who owns the safe house, because they're the ones that know everything.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And there's a lot of, contrast that you make in the book between you and some of the other people that you worked with, which I've got highlighted as well, which we'll get into. But so essentially you overstay your 48-hour welcome, which again, I was like, well, why the fuck would they send them there for 48 hours? However,
supposed to go on one raid.
Yeah. But so you're in Tikrit and basically nobody noticed. You asked to stay, and basically what I found, again, it makes sense, but it was still kind of an interesting piece that I learned, was that the prisoners from the Tikrit area were typically shipped down to Baghdad, and once they're down there, they don't really get interrogated because they don't really give a fuck.
Because there's nobody on the deck of cards in Tikrit.
Yeah, so
why would the Baghdad interrogators mess with them?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, in that, thinking of it kind of from the 30,000-foot aerial view, is why is there so much dysfunction in terms of sending them down there? Like, well, why not leave them up there then? Like, what was the angle, I guess, of of why they would ship them down there and just let them sit.
Okay, my answer to that would be, can you tell me where JSOC has run sustained long-term operations? JSOC doesn't run sustained long-term operations.
Yeah. Were they in charge of all that?
This task force was a JSOC task force.
But I mean, in terms of, so that they were running all of the prisoners, it was up to them what they did with them?
Now, all of the prisoners, no, because you had conventional force prisoners.
Yeah.
You could even have some local criminals, and then JSOC had their own little element of prisoners.
That's Joint Special Operations Command. I know most of you know that, but some of you don't.
But, okay, you're talking about interrogation operations. A guy who's a Chinese Mandarin linguist out of LA is pulled into JSOC because JSOC didn't have interrogators.
Yeah.
You know that cool team of interrogators I ran into? You know how cool they were? These freaking guys were National Guard.
Yeah.
Like, it was, JSOC was like,
Yeah.
we don't do interrogation operations.
Yeah.
Grab some interrogators.
Like,
So how do you, who's there to be the subject matter expert on who comes where and when with regard to prisoners?
yeah. So I guess my question is hearing that then, I mean, was there not a chain of command where, whether it was agency or DOD or whoever, is that there was one umbrella that, okay, we're in charge of all prisoners, you guys take these guys? Was there not that?
No.
No.
Listen,
I'm
not saying listen, but it's hard to understand, right? Because you understand, when I got there, my mind's blown away too. I'm like, this is organized, right? You're like, oh no, this is new. We've never done this. So there was the way prisoners are handled, but every 15 minutes from the SecDef or whoever was coming, but if you need to keep them, keep them. If you need to do enhanced techniques, use them. If you need, well, so at that point, you have conventional operations, which is the big military. Well, then you have JSOC. They're not following. They don't care. There's a whole different prison. There's a whole different transportation. Yeah. There's a whole different everything. They just do whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just seems, and I know it's way easier said than done in that environment because there's so many logistical challenges and security challenges and things of that nature, but that it would be far more efficient and productive if there was one entity that was, at least keeping track of all of it.
It would have been devastating to my operations had there been.
Really?
Because I needed to keep my prisoners at my beck and call for months. And if you want to have an operation, it would say, now, you know what they do now? If they're captured, got 96 hours.
Oh, really?
Then they have to be pulled to a rear permanent facility. After 21 days, guess what? They have to have access to the Red Cross, Red Crescent. Once that happens, try to flip that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So are these guidelines, the 96 hours and the 21 days, are those dictated Geneva Conventions or is it DOD internal?
I wouldn't call them Geneva Convention. I would call them, where would that fall? It kind of under the laws of land and warfare that we've recently with post 9/11 have agreed to. And it's sort of with the Red Cross, Red Crescent, we're not going to go and say it's terrible, because what you want to say is, okay, you have to get them in 96. What they would say is they have to be immediately sent to the rear, prisoners.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not working on getting transportation on the battlefield.
Sure.
So give me 96 hours.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how you get 96 hours.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the point that if it had been more structured and organized, then it would have been detrimental to your operations. And I think that's an important point even for me to remember, because, that's the
Mike, I don't know if you plan on talking about it or not, but my biggest challenge is fighting what has turned into the bureaucracy of interrogations. And it's like, man, we've got to get away from that bureaucracy, or do we need to question how bad we need to go to war? Because if we're not going to fight these wars the way they got to be fought, then you're putting so many lives at danger.
No, I agree. And I have a couple different comments in here written down. I guess, from my standpoint, where that question stems from is just from almost like making sure that you're keeping track of everything, because it seems like there's a little bit of a recurring theme of stuff like that, where it's like, well, ship those guys down there and then nobody interrogates them. It just seems like a waste of intelligence. Whereas if there's at least some entity, whether it's an agency, staffing office, or I mean, not necessarily the agency, because God knows, but even if it's JSOC, whatever, is that there is some entity, whether it's a handful of people or whatever, that's keeping track of where everybody is, so that at least there's a database where you could say, hey, where is so-and-so? Oh, he's down here. I need him fucking over here. Some sort of right hand talking to the left like that. But
so you got right hand talking to the left. I love that analogy. The problem is this: you're dealing with two separate things when you're talking about prison operations. Number one, you're dealing with an intelligence collection. Okay, I need this guy because we're going to gather intelligence. The other thing you're dealing with, you're talking about a security situation. I need to keep these prisoners in prison and not escaping. So you're talking about a guard element, and then you're talking about a collection element. And those two don't see eye to eye on what databases go where and the fluidity of it. So and then you have the other element of you got combat units out there who they know somebody shot them up.
Yeah.
We're taking everyone from this house and keep them in jail.
Yeah.
How do you do an intelligence collection with that goat rope?
Yeah.
Right? Like you're stuck with 20 people and you don't know anything.
Yeah.
So it's a problem.
That's like herding cats on ice skates while fireworks are going off. Which sounds like a fucking good YouTube video while you're bullshitting. All right, so you start interrogating many of these suspected regime sympathizers, family members, bodyguards, etc. If you could kind of describe the process and the information train that you built during that early time as you start just racking them up.
So what I started doing is I had the prisoners that I had available, and I was able eventually to get them to give me, say, one target or two target. What I always wanted to do, once I hit the target, once the team rated, and they brought back the prisoners, my first goal was to figure out, was it a good hit? Can I trust my prisoner? And then say, okay, I have this prisoner. Just give me one more target. And so it was a slow building of a link diagram. And what you do, then I started to realize, wait a second, they may take me to a target that's a bad guy. But what I really need are their facilitators.
Yeah.
People that are safe houses, people they trust, relatives. So now I had this link diagram that became very three-dimensional, right? It was very linear with bad people, but where the dynamic and the meat came was all the relationships around this person. And that, now you created hundreds, now you had thousands of names. So you could understand the dynamics of this city as it pertained to bodyguards with regard to the insurgency. And I could get my arms around that.
Yeah. You mentioned whether or not I can trust a informant or not.
Yeah.
Was there a process that you had to determine that? Was it a gut feeling? Was it just dependent on the person?
Yeah, there's a process. I'm going to give you one shot. You're going to take me to a house. If I get there and the person's there and they are bad, you're my guy. How much money do you need? Typically, you would get there and the person had not been there in weeks. I went and found, why did you think they were? Well, I mean, they were there 6 weeks ago. Oh, I could have asked that question. Oh, I think I did ask that question. Yeah. When's the last time you're there? And you said, well, I thought this. So I give them a shot. I figure out what the problem is. I try to improve communications with my informant.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll give them a second shot, and then they're out.
So two things on, that trust. An easy way to verify if they're trustworthy is, give me a tip and we go hit it. How many times or how much did you run into examples of either just they didn't like somebody and wanted to fuck with them, or it was a fucking trap for your guys and they're like, oh yeah, this guy's here and they're waiting for you? Did that happen often?
Never a trap. It's not going to be a trap. It's just not. Okay, so let me also clarify. I rarely used informants that weren't at one point a prisoner. They always were a prisoner.
Yeah.
And I'm sending them out going, okay, go find me these guys. Now, how do I trust them? If I capture a bad guy, a kid who's in the insurgency, and I capture his two brothers, I'm going to tell the brothers, y'all are semi-innocent, but you knew what your brother was doing. I'm going to keep your brother. Now, you two go and get me his bosses. Once I get that squared away, I'm going to let him go. By the way, I better hear from you. I'm gonna come back and get you. Oh, you want to leave? Well, your dad's at home. I'm gonna get him.
Yeah.
So let's be clear what's going on here. I know your world. I'm gonna give you a shot to work your way out. So I don't know if that's so much an informant or you got some work to get out of this situation that I didn't create for you.
Yeah, no,
there's not a hostage keeping situation.
Yeah, you're just leveraging their relationships against them, which is obviously obviously incredibly effective.
So what I'm saying is, you can trust they're not going to set up an ambush. What I couldn't trust is that they weren't just giving me something, hoping that he may not check.
But yeah, no, I get that. I guess there were elements of like, hey, I can't stand my fucking neighbor down the street that shot one of my cows. Let me say he's a fucking bad guy, and now you go raid him. That happened pretty often.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I did actually some of that in the book.
Yeah.
So what I could do on that is I started about early November. I created this process where I could actually take an informant that I semi-trusted and go enough circles in their story to figure out, is this ironclad?
Yeah.
Is there a secondary motivation? Because eventually my commander, his name is Bam Bam, said, hey, your main goal, Eric, is when all these walk-ins, because walk-ins are a problem, figure out if this is going to be stupid. Are we wasting our time?
Yeah.
So that was a process too.
If there were guys that were already in custody that gave you bad tips like that to go fuck with somebody they didn't like, was there a punishment for that?
Yeah.
Can you describe the punishment?
Yeah, sure. So
Staple their nuts to the chair and tell them to get up?
I'm going to make it much worse than that, right? So what I do, Mike, is I stay within the law because I think that ethically that's what I said I was going to do. So I stay exactly within the law, and then I realize I'm smarter than that, and I know how to solve this problem, right? So here's what I do. If I have a prisoner who says, hey, there's a bad guy over here, go get him. Go to that house, bring the person back. Realize, oh my gosh, this person is in the same business as his brother, and he's trying to take down, someone like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the person I captured. I'm going to bring him in front of the prisoner, and I'm going to say, man, we wrecked your house. This guy gave us the information. Do you know him? He's in competition. I need you to go let everybody that this guy's ratting out people for his own benefit. And then I let him go. Now, how do you think that prisoner feels?
Oh, yeah.
Now we got a real problem. You're using the Americans to solve your personal problems?
Yeah.
That's way worse than any stapling of anything to the table.
And would that message resonate through the prison where other guys knew that would happen if they did that, and that would help curtail it?
So typically, you can always control what resonates through the prison. What the description I gave you was very blatant. I could just send some messages, maybe have a conversation, and make sure this prisoner heard it. Maybe it wasn't directly in front, but just enough subtlety to where it's like, oh my gosh, did you hear what's going on? Because I always try to use a negative to my advantage, right? So the negative, they say, we have to keep all prisoners isolated because they talk to each other. I'm like, prisoners talk to each other. Why don't I use that for my information campaign?
Yeah.
Wait a second. If you release this guy, he's going to say what he knew in here. I'm like, wait a second.
Maybe
if I release this guy, he's going to say what he heard in here.
Yeah.
Why don't I control that narrative?
Well, to me, that's awesome. And so that makes me wonder then, if you're letting some of that take place, do you have the ability to monitor that? Obviously, to some degree, but was there any really unique ways they were communicating or things that you kind of caught them doing that you weren't expecting and you were just like, holy shit, like how did they pull this off?
I thought it was fascinating the way they would. So if you have a prisoner and you release him, that person's like kryptonite because everyone out there like, man, did he flip? Is he a spy?
Don't fucking touch that guy.
Get away from him.
Yeah.
And the way that the enemy could slowly start testing, bringing some food up to a relative, bring this. I mean, it was a 4 or 5 days before anyone, and then get them out. I mean, they were so careful to not, Because they were like, okay, we're going to release you. Not me, but they'd be like, we're going to release you. And when the enemy comes, call us and we'll go capture them. Like, dude, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You think these guys are stupid?
Yeah.
Okay, well, then when we release him, he won't join the enemy. Oh, he could if you're not. It's a vetting process.
Yeah.
And it's awesome the way they do it.
Yeah, that's fucking remarkable, and I think it speaks to no different than prison systems here. The ingenuity that exists in that environment is fucking astounding.
War is such a great creator for entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's crazy shit. I mean, same with prison. Selling fucking soup and shanks and whatever. But
That's right.
All right, so you wind up, as you're building your resume of people you're interrogating, you run into a really interesting cat named Tashin, that's Saddam's servant. And I thought it was really neat, some of the things that you learned about Saddam that proved incredibly valuable from somebody that unquestionably a lot of people may think is less valuable than you found.
The cook, the chef.
Yeah. Could you talk to some of the things that you learned that people would find interesting, especially if there's something that maybe you didn't mention in the book that you gleaned from him?
So this was Saddam's chef, and he cooked every meal for Saddam Hussein.
Did he drag his nuts across Saddam's food? McDonald's style.
Let me tell you something. He didn't think it was that big of a deal that he was Saddam's cook. He was very whatever about the whole situation. He basically said, there is a dish that's very unique to Iraq. It's a fish dish called mazgoof. Anybody who's listening who might be Iraqi, you know that dish mazgoof. It is it's the type of preparation and a little bit of the spices, but it's cooked in an open fire and it's over this certain way of a fish. And the chef said, I make the best mazgoof in the world. I'm famous. Well, I'm Saddam Hussein's cook. It's his favorite meal. So then he says, a couple of pieces. I don't know if I put this in the book or not. Saddam only ate twice a day. Saddam did not stay in a different place every other night. Saddam never, ever had doubles.
Really?
Ever.
No shit.
Never had doubles. And that's the biggest
misconception.
Man, how many times have you gone after an HVT, Mike, and they're like, oh, this person, what is it? They have to take insulin. They have to take bags and bags of insulin. They're about to die, and if they're going to have blah, 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 blah. And you get them, you're like, no, they don't.
Yeah.
This is just not true. And these rumor mills. So the number one, Saddam only stayed in about 5 places. And 90% of the time, he stayed in 3 palaces.
Yeah.
And this guy knew. He cooked every single meal.
Oh, shit.
He didn't have a double. Saddam ate twice a day. And he absolutely loved this fish.
Yeah.
To nth degree.
Yeah.
He ate it all the time. That's why the guy was a cook.
Was this guy cooking while, after the invasion?
No.
Yeah, that was it.
He was done, right?
Yeah.
That's what the interesting point to me was the guy said, a couple of days right before because we announced when we're coming a few days in advance. Saddam brought people in, and there were these group of bodyguards. To me, I'm like, somewhere in here is the group. Who was in that group was Mohammed Ibrahim Omar al-Muslim, the guy who took us to Saddam. He was one of the 8 or 9 people. But at that point, they released the staff.
Yeah.
They said, go home. Don't
do
do anything. Go home. We'll call you when we're back up in action. When we're up, it's like, we're going to have a hurricane. Everybody go hunker down. We'll call you when we're good.
Yeah. God, it's some fascinating shit. That is really surprising that he had no double and didn't go all over the place, because those are the 2 most common, now that we know, misconceptions about him, I'd say.
So I'll tell you what he did. What he did do is he had 3 levels of bodyguards. Level 3, they're the outers. All they do, they're permanently at the palaces. They're fixed security. Level 2, 80, 60, 80, level 2s. They would be the mobility team, and they would go pre-recon and secure an area where he was going to. Now, what he did do is he would send them off to the 5 different locations.
So you never knew.
And they never knew which one he was going to.
Oh, okay.
But then he had his inner circle They were always with him.
And that was about 32 or
There
so.
were 32, and they operated in teams of 16.
Yeah.
16 for 40, 72 hours at a time.
Yeah.
72 on, 72 off.
Wow. And those 32 were his most trusted assholes.
Those
obviously.
were his boys.
And so the Advon teams that
Advon.
the advanced teams that would go to these 5 locations, and they would report, yeah, it's clear, or go this route or whatever, and then his inner circle of those 32 would use whatever info they needed to go to the place that they actually were going to go.
They were his immediate PSD,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And then Abed Mahmoud, he was the ace below the sun, so he was the ace of clubs.
Yeah.
He was always with Saddam, and that was his trusted guy.
Yeah. Okay.
But guess what? We captured him, and Saddam wasn't anywhere near him.
Yeah.
So
basically, once they scattered 3 sheets to the wind, it was kind of all bets are off,
and we didn't know who Saddam picked.
Yeah, to be his handful.
Until we're about to find out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So another thing I found pretty fascinating is you observe others interrogating within your kind of field office, and you notice a pretty stark contrast between your style and theirs.
Yeah.
And I wanted to read another excerpt here that kind of highlights that I thought was valuable for the asshole listener. And I mean that in the most endearing term possible. We know a lot about you, Taha, Ray began in an even measured voice, and you are in big trouble. That would not have been my approach. The point was to find out what the prisoner knew, not tell them how much you knew. From my viewpoint, Christie wasn't helping the process by interjecting stray facts about Taha's family connections. Her knowledge of his family tree was impressive, but I couldn't see the point in revealing it. It was one thing for a prisoner to think that you knew every detail of his life. It was another thing to actually tell the prisoner what you knew. That would enable him to anticipate which areas he could or could not lie to you about. Then on the next page you say, it didn't surprise or concern me when prisoners lied to me. Figuring out the information they were trying to conceal behind the lie was what mattered. If you could speak to that a little bit.
Okay. Well, I first want to say that those interrogations that I observed, those were conducted by agent CIA operators, case officers. They had no training in interrogations. They had no idea what they were doing, and they looked as dumb as they possibly could. And I'm sorry, but at some point you just got to call it out. And you're like, what lane are you in, man?
Yeah.
Do they give you all a badge or your credentials and go, you're good at everything?
Yeah.
Because it was clear they had watched a movie.
Yeah.
It was obvious. And they were so nervous
Yeah.
that when somebody goes in an interrogation, they're so nervous. They're like, yes, Taha, we know very much. We know everything. I'm like, is this a bad movie?
Yeah. Fucking Quentin Tarantino movie.
No, it was. And my problem is I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't have a ton of experience doing this. So if this works, my mind's blown.
Yeah.
I wasn't glad it worked because those two wore me slick.
Yeah.
I'm glad it didn't work because I'm like, if that works, I can't do this job because my brain doesn't work this way.
Yeah. No, I mean, to me, I always like to draw parallels with dogs. You see a lot of that in the dog industry where it's very valuable to watch people that even, I won't necessarily say don't know what they're doing. In some cases, that is the instance, but watching different people do it and kind of learning from seeing the challenges or mistakes that they make, and figuring out what not to do is every bit as valuable as watching somebody that's good at what they do. But
I want to make a point on that. Okay, how many people? I love that parallel. How many people own dogs?
90 million.
Okay, you got that number
in this country, 88 million.
And there are some people who think they know everything about dogs.
Yeah, most people that own a dog think they're a fucking expert. I can tell you from experience.
Now, when you get to that elite level where somebody spent a career, a life knowing dogs, they see the world differently when it comes to dogs.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, I didn't see the world differently at that moment. Now where I am, I just need anybody who ever gets stuck in an interrogation. You don't know interrogations yet.
Yeah.
Trust me. And I don't care that you're bad at it. I don't. It's the fact that you're going to fake the funk and tell people you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's okay not to know. This is not an instinctive skill.
Yeah.
I can't be born and be good with dogs.
Yeah.
That would be weird.
Well, I think that some people inherently are, and I would ascertain that there's probably an element similarly in interrogations where some people, you're not born to do it, but you have certain genetic skill sets that make you much more competent, much faster at it. And it's that way with dogs. I mean, some people are good at reading dogs, have an ability to, quasi communicate with them far more than others. But agreed, like there's a component to it that's an educational piece that has to be there, which leads me to the follow-up question of how much of it is structured training versus how much of it is kind of a gut feeling from you.
So I was very lucky. I'm just lucky in life on this situation. This is what I was born to do, and I have a bunch of experience doing it.
Yeah.
So I can't say grab an average Joe, do 2,700 interrogations. We're still not going to be in the same ballpark. Yeah. It's what I was born to do.
Yeah.
I wasn't born to shoot. I wasn't born to handle dogs, and I wasn't born to do this or that. I wasn't born to be a pilot.
Yeah.
I was born to interrogate, because if you are born, if you have this ability to hear and build a picture, and not overpaint and not create paint that didn't come from the words that didn't come out, and only use the words to create a picture and be able to make that in your mind, and you can see the space that wasn't.
Yeah.
You have a chance to be an interrogator.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, with most things in life whether it's an animal or a human being, attains a super high level of expertise at something, is that there's a genetic component that just fucking has to be there. Now, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get to that level without hard work, education, training, consistency, that, et cetera.
Yep.
But, I see it with dogs all the time. I see it with athletes all the time. I mean, take Muhammad Ali. If he had never boxed in his life, and was just strong and good shape or whatever, he'd still be a fucking handful, because just genetically, he was who he was. But it's that combination of that perfect storm of flawless or almost flawless genetics coupled with the perfect storm of the nurture piece of education and all that
always fire.
Yeah,
he had a lot of fire in his gut.
Yeah, and I think that's mostly genetic. But
yeah.
All right, so you start connecting more and more dots, rounding up more and more ties to Saddam. You tend to learn as much, from your failures as you do as your successes, just like we mentioned. There's an interesting component of learning from your failures that you talk about, in contrast to watching other people that suck at it. But you speak, pretty prominently to, learning as much from your failures as you do as your successes. Could you give us an example of that and kind of describe that?
I'll go into interrogations, but generally in life, I don't know how to do, I don't know how to learn anything without failures, right? So for anybody who's listening, I think I have a cool resume, right? I'm a graduate of Ranger School, Chinese Mandarin linguist. I'm a jump master, done 2,700 interrogations. What is not mentioned is I flunked Ranger School 3 times before I passed. I flunked jump master school, had to go twice, and I came in dead last in my Chinese Mandarin course. So how's that look for a resume?
Yeah.
But you know what? I would not be the infantry guy I was if I didn't fail Ranger School 3 times.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I learned Chinese Mandarin mainly because I sucked at it so bad that I had to figure out my own way to kind of figure it out. And when it came to interrogations are so hard. They are, because you're just behind the 8 ball. And you are going to fail. If you cannot accept the failure and not make an excuse and say, I'm doing something wrong. If you cannot do that, you will never succeed in interrogation.
No, you won't succeed in life if you can't fucking admit when you screw something up. That's one of my biggest fucking pet peeves, is people that don't take responsibility.
And I'm going to say something is, if you're a private in infantry, and you're doing something wrong, your team leader's going to get you squared up. He's going to say, hey, dude, get it together.
Yeah.
There was not a single interrogator at that house.
Yeah.
There was not an experienced, there was no one to go, hey, dude, there was Ray and Christy.
But you're pretty much a one-man show, right?
So if you're a one-man show, if you can't self-evaluate,
Yeah.
how are you supposed to get better?
Yeah, you got to be hard on yourself.
You know what you do? You make excuses. You say, oh, these guys, no one's talking. Nobody's. You make excuses if you're not going to self-critique.
Yeah.
And then you're going to start torturing them because you're going to go, he ain't talking, but the boss sure likes it when this guy's sucking. So let's just beat the crap out of the guy.
Turn the screws on him. Yeah.
And you know what? That makes me look like a good interrogator.
Yeah. Do you have one example of, something that sticks out in your mind as something that you fucked up that you learned a lot from?
Oh, man, it was the biggest lesson. I'll try to make this pretty clear, but we're basically going after this al-Muslit family, and it was a small group of inner circle bodyguards. And I'm looking for that Faris Yassin, who eventually ends up smelling really bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's brutal. But these guys are hard to find. So
Captain Speedstick, right?
And we had informants out there looking, but most of our informants weren't good. Well, I had this group of informants came in, and they said, "All right, Faris Yassin. They said, Eric, we can track him, but we need weapons, we need vehicles, and we need money." And I'm like, "All right, I can't give you that. So what do you got?" And they're like, well, "Listen, he's got two best friends. One friend is in the insurgency, and his other best friend is this 85-year-old dude." And I'm like, where's the 85-year-old? Like, he's sitting at his house.
Why is he friends with an 85-year-old dude? More importantly,
they like to hunt. They like to train falcons. You know, falcon training.
Yeah,
is a big
falconers.
thing.
Yeah,
they were falconers.
Oh, okay.
So, and the informant said, this 85-year-old's sitting at his house. I said, you know what? Go throw him in the trunk. Bring him in here. I said, if you do that, I'll give you your weapons. And they're like, Eric, 85-year-old's innocent, man. He hadn't done it. I said, I don't care. Go throw him in the trunk. Bring him in here. I'm gonna give you all your stuff. That way, I know we're tracking.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we're not doing that. I said, then don't come back and talk to me. You want your stuff? Get the old man in here. I didn't hear a word. Right? Nothing. Informants, walk-ins, all this stupid. I had a 20-year-old kid walk in, and he said, hey, I know where Faris Yassin is. And I'm like, okay, let me talk to this kid. Faris Yassin's 58 years old. This kid's 20. They lived on completely different sides of the creek. There's no relationship. They cannot know each other. I go to my boss, and I'm like, bam, bam, don't go on this raid, man. This is jacked. Fourth ID, conventional dudes, they're like, hey, but the kid says he knows the target. If you're not taking it, we're going to take it. I'm like, y'all take it. Be careful. This is going to be a trap. Next morning, Bam Bam comes to me and says, hey, Eric, I need you to do a favor. Can you go get Faris Yassin from Fourth ID? They got him last night.
Oh, and choke yourself while you're at it.
Man, you know what? That's why Bam Bam's a badass.
Yeah.
He didn't mess with me.
Yeah.
He was cool. He didn't get this was probably the 8th most wanted guy in Iraq.
Yeah.
And I passed.
Yeah. Well, but to be fair, you also passed because it didn't add up and you were looking out for the safety of the boys. So, I mean, how could you get mad at you for that?
Fourth ID, hands off Faris Yassin. He smells. And I'm like, oh, great. My golden nugget. And now I got to have him stink up my interrogation room. Oh, this is brutal. This is the worst day.
Yeah.
Next day, Fourth ID calls and says, hey, man, that 20-year-old kid was wanting to get some money. And, since Faris Yassin was a big deal, could you bring some cash? I'm like, yeah. Tell that kid not to go anywhere. I go down there, and I start talking to the kid. Talking. Now I've got my brain on.
Did you ask him how the fuck he knew him?
I didn't, because he wasn't going to tell me. He would have told me before. He was lying to me. So I had to put my investigative hat. I start talking to this kid. Guess what? His maternal grandfather is the 85-year-old.
Oh, okay.
So basically, when the 85-year-old gets told, hey, dude, they're going to come arrest you. The 85s are like, I didn't do anything just because I'm friends with Faris Yassin. Nope. Hey, grandson, go. I know where Faris is. Okay. So this all ties together. Yeah. What's the lesson learned? The lesson learned for me at that moment, I told myself, you don't need bad guys to get intel on bad guys.
Yeah.
85-year-old nobodies can tell you where the bad guys are. So at that point, my whole link diagram went from here's the bad guy link diagram to wait a second.
The facilitator.
Facilitator.
Yeah.
I've lived my rest of my career off facilitators because of that lesson of a failure.
Yeah. They're going to know as much or more and less likely to assume that they're going to be targeted.
But you know what? I would have never figured that out unless I was willing to go back and talk to that kid.
Yeah.
And if I would have said, how'd you know? He wouldn't have told me.
Yeah.
But said, you know what? Treat him with respect, slow it down,
Yeah.
figure it out.
You guys ended up paying him?
No.
You didn't pay him?
No.
Yeah.
He should have told me.
Yeah. So if you had paid him, what would a common amount be?
$500.
Oh, okay. So it's,
U.S. Well, in Iraq at that time,
that's a fuck ton of money.
he's good for about 4 months.
Yeah, okay. All right, so one of the tactics that you seem to employ regularly that I liked the way you describe it, but again is a little different from other people, is building a timeline, in air quotes. Your tactic was to jump around a fair bit, and I get why. Different than they taught, different than most people did it. They're more chronological that way, and you did it, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like your goal was in the intent was to purposefully confuse the person. Is that not it?
No, I wasn't trying to confuse me whatsoever, okay? What I had to do was to ask a series of questions that did have flow to it.
Yeah.
But it had what I call continuity away from a time. Because if I go linear, chronological order, or reverse chronological on something, let's say, for instance, I'm talking to a prisoner and they got involved because of their brother-in-law, their sister's husband.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to omit the existence of that sister's husband. But let's say 3 vehicles ago from this prisoner, he had bought it. The third vehicle he had before the current one, he bought from this brother-in-law. If I say, what vehicle do you own? What do you own? Where'd you get it? How much did you pay? Who got it for you? When I get to that third one, they're going to go. They're going to see it coming and go, oh, I got this from Bob McGillicuddy, not my brother-in-law, because they want to admit the existence. Well, if you go in a certain order, they'll see you coming. But if I can talk to someone, talk about their life and their education and their jobs and their family, and get them into discussing a vehicle, because I got to get all of them. I've got to get every chronological aspect of their life. But I can't get it in a way till I can tell them where I'm coming to, where they omit the one that's tied to a bad guy. But I can get them, if I do it not linear, they will mention all of them and not know how to admit something. Now, when we go to where this vehicle came from, they're in a pickle.
Yeah.
And if I've got other linear aspects that box them in,
Okay.
you can't get out of that with me.
Yeah. It's rat trapping them timeline-wise.
Man, it's rat trapping. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And it used to irritate other people. They're like, dude, what are you doing? You're scatterbrained. And I'm like,
Just fucking bear with me.
just deal with it. Just trust me. You trust me?
Yeah, it's really neat. You know, there's a number of elements in your book that for the reader, and I can't recommend enough to buy and read this book. There's a ton of really cool stories in it, but there are also a lot of lessons learned that if you have the ability to just even remotely read between the lines, you can pick up a lot of pretty effective and valuable lessons that you talk about, kind of learning the hard way and just different examples of that. Another one being, in terms of how you differ tactic-wise, as you talk about emotion. And this is one of those things that strikes a real chord with me because dog training is so heavily convoluted and corrupted by emotion in a bad fucking way, very similarly to interrogations would be. And I want to read another excerpt, and then I'll kind of give you my thought process on how it correlates. But you say, this was another area where I differed from other interrogators. I really didn't care how bad a prisoner was or was supposed to be. Maybe they'd killed Americans, but they were soldiers and that was their job. Just like our job was to kill them. Did that make us bad guys? As far as I was concerned, it was my responsibility to look at the war and the men who fought it on both sides as objectively as I could. I couldn't afford to be motivated by real emotion. I knew that when a soldier died, his family and friends would mourn for him far better and longer than I ever could. I needed to focus all my attention on interrogating. I could not afford to take what they may or may not have done personally. One thing on that is that one of the biggest fucking problems, and I can see again how it would apply so much in your environment, but in mine, when a dog makes a mistake, Same thing with a kid, same thing with a spouse. And I am as guilty as any fucking person of not being able to shove my emotions up my ass and in my back pocket and not let it influence how I'm either correcting a dog or reinforcing, influencing, manipulating an environment, whatever. But just how incredibly important it is to be able to table those fucking emotions in that moment, especially, in the circumstance we're talking about, somebody you may have known that was killed on a raid, capturing this guy, by this guy, what have you. Talk to that ability to control that.
This is so important, right, as an interrogator. So I want to first make it be known. If somebody watches my interrogations, they're going to be like, dude, you're all over the map. You're laughing, you're crying, you're yelling, you're screaming, you're showing them. And I'm like, yeah, but those are all controlled. I don't have any real emotions.
Yeah, it's all manufactured.
And my point is this. If you have real emotions, then can you pull the laughter, the emotion, the connection out of your pocket if I hate this guy? If I'm upset at this guy, how do I have control of these emotions? I have to have them at a flicker. I mean, at a flicker, I've got to be able to go any direction that I want. And if real emotions are involved, so then that says, wait a second. I have had people prep me. I may have even put it in there that said, this guy's killed many bad. Don't forget, this is the enemy. And I'm like, are you trying to get me juiced?
Yeah.
Like, if I have to get juiced to do my job, I don't really deserve to have this job. So now I'm like, wait a second. Is this, do we juice our soldiers emotionally so they'll have more energy? Because I don't need that help.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
So what is the purpose of true emotion? Because I can promise you, I've never, ever had I've never had a negative feeling towards a prisoner, towards anything they've done against us. And I've never had a positive feeling towards a person for anything good that they've done for me, ever.
Yeah.
It doesn't, because what is this?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it just convolutes the overall goal, which is to extract information, which was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned in having Dr. James Mitchell on the podcast. Are you familiar with him?
No.
So he was one of the few architects, rather, of the enhanced interrogation manual, basically, with the CIA post 9/11. He interrogated and broke Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Okay.
That led to the Bin Laden raid. But so a lot of similarities between you guys, and the one I'm about to read next was another one that I found. Myself, and I have no doubt most listeners find the most intriguing and unexpected in terms of what your idea of an American interrogator, their real main job is. And I want to read the next excerpt to highlight that. The other important takeaway was that it wasn't always necessary to break a prisoner in order to get good information. I was never able to frighten or intimidate Nasir into telling me what I wanted to know. But just by talking with him about his life as a bodyguard, I learned more than I had from a dozen other interrogations. The fact was, Nasir was a prime example of a prisoner whose guilt or innocence didn't fucking matter. I was in the business of getting information, and it didn't matter if the source was good, bad, or indifferent, as long as he had what I needed, and I could find a way to get it out of him. For me, what that dovetails into in terms of, a lot of the lessons learned from Guantanamo was the give and take. I'm not here to fucking make sure you understand you're guilty and punish you. I'm here to get what I can out of you. And then that's something that, when people find out, whether it's bribes or here, let me give this guy a fucking Quran or let me sweeten this fucking deal, they're like, that's fucking bullshit. He's a fucking terrorist. Fuck that. But it's like the main goal is to get and extract that valuable information. Can you talk to that?
Well, so when people say those things like, I'm not giving him special treatment, he killed, I'm like, hey, is my job to punish? Because we can just take him to the torture lab.
Yeah.
Because you think I care? I don't.
Yeah.
Now, why don't you do that? Oh, you're not allowed to? Guess what? I'm not either. But it's not we're not here to torture. I'm sorry. We're not here to punish.
Yeah.
We're here to gather intelligence. And I'll be the first one. If I, after my years of experience, realize, hey guys, we can't do this, or the best way to do this is torture, I'll be up on the hill preaching it, because we're here to win wars.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Mike, I'm telling you, if torture works best, I'd be the first one.
Yeah.
And I would be the one who I can make that message.
Yeah.
It works best. It does not. This is not about punishment. It's about gathering information, accurate information, efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
That's all this is about.
Yeah.
So can we take away what they did?
Yeah. Well, it goes back.
Who cares?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to, checking your emotion and realizing the big picture is, regardless, irrespective of what this fucking guy's done, what's valuable and what's most important is getting that actionable intelligence, especially early on. Every day that passes, he becomes more and more useless. But to me, I found that as a fascinating parallel between the Dr. Mitchell podcast, yours, and then again, just in life and in dog training. Of being
I
able to
want to say something else about if you're going to torture, you had better know exactly what you're looking for. And I'm going to say 95, it's probably 98, but let's say 95% of interrogations. The interrogator does not know what the prisoner knows. Mm-hmm. So now we're like, wait a second. If you're going to torture, you like, I'm torturing you until you give me this thing. Where's the ticking time bomb? Where's this? But in reality, in these interrogations,
how do you know if it's accurate?
No, I didn't know what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I had never heard of the name Muhammad Ibrahim before I got there.
Yeah.
I had never realized that Maz Goof, the fish, and this. So it's one of those things where it's like, you're basically asking someone to tell you things you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Try to get that from torture.
Yeah.
What you do is you inspire with hope.
Yeah.
Because Muhammad Ibrahim, when he broke, said, boom, 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 we got to go. And when he was there and Bam Bam couldn't find him, he said, get me out of the truck. Get me out of the truck. He took him out of the truck and he pulls Bam Bam to the hole. You don't get that from torture.
Yeah.
You get that from somebody who says,
leverage.
I'm with you now.
Yeah, leverage.
That's right.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating shit. The original op team that you were with, they, about halfway through your time there, they leave, new guys turnover. How was that? Because you went from being basically the deer in the headlights when you showed up to where now you're the fucking guy that the new op team is looking to fill them in. And how was that process of having?
That was a perfect example of taking advantage, making positive out of a bad situation. I didn't want the team to leave. That was my security blanket. And I had Jeff, the operator, and we were doing a lot of these interrogations together. And I thought, wow, they're going to leave and this is going to be terrible. Well, for that team, I was still the new guy. I was the rookie interrogator. And when the new team came in, I was the subject matter expert on how to get to the mess hall, and this toilet's tricky when you flush it. And by the way, here's the. I was the guy.
Yeah.
So it didn't take me 5 seconds to go, oh, I'm the guy on everything.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did is I ripped down all the CIA stupid link diagrams. I'm like, this doesn't matter.
Fuck these guys.
And I'm telling you, so I'm hand jamming these things, right? And I'm putting them up, and the analysts are like, dude, how come we've never heard of anybody on these things? And I'm like, no, man, this is the stuff.
Yeah.
It's Crete. No, this is what we're going after.
Yeah.
And it just it comes down to, if they don't know, then you are reality.
Yeah.
You just create a new reality.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, and being in that position, you have the ability to influence that really however you want. For the listener to kind of be able to get a mental picture of this entire time, you're in Saddam's Tikrit Palace, is that right?
So when you think of palace, I want you to think about a university campus, a good-sized university campus, and instead of school buildings, it has palace houses.
Yeah.
So there were ginormous ones, and then over on the side along the river, there's one little section where there were 3 little houses by themselves, and that's where they put the JSOC team. Mm-hmm. That's because we had to be by ourselves. I don't know why, but we did.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of on the palace, but more over on the side.
That was the maid's quarters, right?
No, you know what it was? It was his wife's pool house.
Okay.
Right along the river.
Yeah. Okay. So interesting story is that that palace in Tikrit, and this was mid-April of 2003. I was at SEAL Team 3 at the time with Echo Platoon. we were attached to the 1st Marine Division alongside, the entire fucking division marched up into Tikrit, drove up into Tikrit, and assaulted Tikrit, in traditional or conventional fashion of legitimately taking it down as an entire fucking city. It was the last, we figured at that time it was pretty early on in the war, and so everybody kind of assumed that it was going to be his last great stand. We figured he was up there, which, coincidentally he was, which is interesting. But, we thought there was going to be a lot of resistance. And there wasn't, and we ended up driving through an area where you describe in the book, Oja, I think it's called, or Oja. I'm giving the Spanish interpretation of that. Oja, where I had the exact same thought process, because it was, I wouldn't say pre-dawn, but it was at dawn. Like, there was enough light to see, but it was right at dawn as we're rolling through there, dead fucking quiet. And houses, I was like, how the fuck is this Iraq? It was like, this place is badass. Like, who the fuck lives here?
Yep.
But there, not a fucking soul to be found. Granted, you got 30,000 fucking Marines and a SEAL platoon driving up. But we ended up taking down that palace. We were the first American forces, and it took the whole fucking thing down.
It's right there. We were right. That's where we were.
Took several hours, and then we ended up rotating watch on the rooftop for several weeks while we lived in it and operated. We went out in town a few times, did some sniper overwatch stuff and whatever, and then bagged ass out of there when there was basically not a whole lot going on. But it was neat to read, you talking about just a few months after I left, all of this taking place right where we were, and took that palace down. So for me, it was a really kind of neat trip down memory lane.
And you can describe for your folks, when your base is the palace, I mean, you're in the city.
Yeah.
You're right in the mix. So to go on a mission, you're not going 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was right down the street.
4 minutes outside the wire.
Yeah, and from the rooftop, we could see, the Air Force had just leveled the fucking airfield, which you could see from across town, and there was a huge cache of armament and weapons and fucking bombs and ordnance and all of this shit underneath the airfield that was going off sympathetically for like a week. And so at night, it looked like you were staring at the fucking sun through like a telescope with solar flares. Like, it was just shit blowing up non-fucking stop for days. It was a sight to behold, no doubt about it. But anyway, just like I said, it was really neat to know that I was there, just a couple of months before all of this was taking place. And it was a neat trip for me to read about that. All right, so mid-October to the infamous day of 13 December, you're getting turned over with the new team, building rapport with them, going out, doing the same shit, hitting houses, doing lots of raids and interrogations, person after person, essentially building like a spider web of intel connecting all of these different dots. There's a lot in the book where you talk about lots of different instances that are super fascinating. Obviously, I don't want to spoil everything for the reader, but if you could just kind of reduce that to a minute or two of walking us through that buildup.
So when the new team came in October, they trusted me completely. We still had the CIA agent. When he got shot and he wasn't replaced, Bam Bam basically said, can we use your interrogations as the spearhead for the hunt? And I'm like, absolutely. Let's go. I think we need to go after this al-Muslit, Muhammad Ibrahim. He's like, all right, let's go. So we got to the point on December 1st where we narrowed it down to his driver being the key element. And the problem was his driver was connected to the governor's head of security of Tikrit. The governor of Tikrit was our puppet, U.S. puppet. His head of security is the reason he stayed alive. That head of security had more cachet in D.C. than we did. And Muhammad Ibrahim's driver was related to that head of security. So we were told, you can't touch the driver. Bam Bam said, I'm touching him. We're arresting him. And Bam Bam at that point's like, Eric, we are going to get shut down. Go, push. So the driver on December 1st says, all right, I'm going to tell you what's going on. I deliver millions of dollars. I deliver all the orders from Muhammad Ibrahim. He's taking all orders from Saddam. That's the moment, December 1st, where I'm like, oh my gosh, we're right. He is here. We just got to find him. And the driver basically flips with me.
Can I interrupt real quick? At that time, did you keep that pretty fucking under your hat in terms of just your group that, hey, we know he's here, or is that something you shared with any other head shed?
You would never share it. The title of my book is Mission Blacklist Number 1. You shouldn't know this. You know why I call it Mission Blacklist Number 1? You shouldn't. No. It's not like we call it Mission Blacklist Number 1 because if you were going after Saddam Hussein in 2003 and you dare told anyone, hey, we're going after Saddam, they'd fire you on the spot. You had more respect if you said, man, we're going after this leprechaun.
No shit.
Because they had done hundreds and thousands of raids. At this point, every single source was so wrong and so stupid and so idiotic. And they had been to every house in Tikrit. You didn't even say blacklist. It was called BL1. And Bam Bam was like, fellas, we might be going after BL1.
No shit.
Because you were an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Mike, there's a leprechaun in the garage.
Yeah. Let's go fuck him up.
Dude, and you'd look for a while, but after 8, however many months, you're like,
wow. That's
dude,
fucking
so Bam Bam would have been more than willing to tell anybody that'll listen. They didn't want to hear it.
Yeah. So they were operating with that kind of autonomy. It was just like, just go fucking do stuff.
Well, he is Bam Bam, and that's an operator.
Yeah.
He's the commander. So you know how it is. They let him do whatever they want.
Yeah.
They basically say, what do you need?
Yeah. I guess, there's still some level of, there's a like in the Navy, at least, there's a Commodore, there's a fucking task unit commander, there's these different positions that still.
And they report, we tell them, we're going after this, we're going after this. Yeah. The bottom line was this. At the end of 2003, they're looking to figure out where to put this team into Tikrit.
Yeah.
So Bam Bam and the team, you realize this team had 7 operators. The operators would rotate out of Baghdad. Guess who came to Tikrit? Guys who had bad backs.
Yeah.
Blown knees.
No shit.
We were the misfits because there was no one in Tikrit.
Fucking black sheep at
And
Tikrit.
there were a couple of hard chargers in October who really wanted to get some action. Bam Bam rotated into Baghdad because there's nothing in Tikrit.
Yeah.
We're stuck with the Chinese Mandarin linguist. So, he could have told whoever wanted to listen.
Yeah.
But they were like, hey, you're good, man. We're really busy up here.
Yeah.
So.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So.
Driver basically says we're going after Saddam. All right. Now the driver says he'll be at one of the, Muhammad Ibrahim's the guy that can take you. Driver said, I don't know where Saddam is, but bodyguard, Muhammad Ibrahim knows. I'll take you to one of 5 safe houses. He'll be at there that night. We go do every hit. He's not, bodyguard's not there. Brought the prisoners back. Prisoners said, yep, this was a safe house. You moved to Samara, town of Samara. Another prisoner says his sub-commander in Samara's house is here. Next night, raided that house. No bodyguard. Sub-commander in Samara, his little brother was there. Brother comes in and says, my brother's sub-commander. Muhammad Ibrahim's not staying here. He's 2 blocks from where you captured me. Turn, go hit the rental house of Muhammad Ibrahim. No Muhammad Ibrahim. 20-year-old son was there. So we're tracking, man. We can't get our guy. 20-year-old comes in and starts crying, breaking down, basically says, my dad doesn't love me. I have no idea where he was. And by the way, he was there 2 hours before you got me. I'm done.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm like, where do we go now? None of my prisoners know. I don't know where he went. Kid starts talking about how his dad doesn't love him and he wishes he took him fishing. Like when they were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Where do y'all go fishing? Along the river. Where? They just built a fish pond. I'm sorry, what? They just built a fish pond next to the Tigris River. I go to Bam Bam, I'm like, Bam Bam, they couldn't have built that fish pond for any other reason than Saddam's fish. And he's like,
get the fuck out.
We're going to go raid a fish pond. I'm like, you have to raid the fish pond.
No shit.
So when we raided the sub-commander's house and caught the little brother, at the sub-commander's house, there was a safe. We blew open the safe, $1.9 million US.
Yeah.
And I was at that point when Baghdad's like, man, what are you guys doing up there? We're tracking. We didn't ask for help. We go to the fish pond. The Delta team in Baghdad wants to go with us because now this Muhammad Ibrahim must be important.
Yeah.
We raid the fish pond. No Muhammad Ibrahim. And Bam Bam's like, dude, so this whole time from December 1st, he's told me you're leaving on December 9th. Your tour's up. You're December 9th. So we raided. It's like they're like, Bam Bam's pushing, saying, we got to get this raid before Maddox leaves. Our team believes we're tracking. We go to the fish pond. Nothing. 2 fishermen. Done. That's it. Goodbye. See you, Bam Bam. Take all the prisoners. The analysts are like, good, dude, because we need to go back to CIA informants. This prisoner thing's not working out. So I take all my prisoners back to Baghdad with these fishermen. And they're like, all right, we're going to release the fishermen tomorrow. So I had one night, got these fishermen, interrogated. Took them back and forth. Took 13 hours. One of the fishermen breaks. Says, I work for Muhammad Ibrahim. Catch fish out of the river, put it in the pond. Cool. How do you know him? The fisherman says, my cousin's his deputy, number 2 guy. Cool. Where'd they go? He said, well, 2 days ago, Muhammad Ibrahim and his cousin, the deputy, came and got an address for the fisherman's aunt and uncle in Baghdad. He said, I think they got the address because they're going to the house. Got the map, got the sketch, told the team in Baghdad, can you go hit the raid in Baghdad? They're like, man, we'll put it on the list. My flight leaves the country in 3 days, December 13th. 2003, my flight leaves at 8 in the morning. 1 o'clock in the morning on December 13th, the Baghdad team calls and said, slow night, did your raid. Didn't find anything. Muhammad Ibrahim wasn't there. We got some prisoners. Brought the prisoners back, 2 in the morning. Flight leaves at 8. Started the interrogation of the person at the house. That dude is not from Tikrit. I mean, he's not from Baghdad. He's from Tikrit. Took me another hour. He said, I'm the deputy. I'm the deputy of Muhammad Ibrahim. Took another hour. He says, yeah, I know where he is. He's in this prison. You got him. You got him last night. I'm like, what? He was sleeping next to me when y'all raided the house. There's no way he got away. And I'm like, there's no way he got away. So I got all the prisoners from the raid. Never seen Muhammad Ibrahim. Didn't have a picture. Knew what he was supposed to look like. Start lifting hoods. Last hood. There he is. I knew his face. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
It was a significant weight gain that...
No.
No?
It was his chin. He is supposed to have I was told he was going to have a hole in his chin. And a prisoner drew it. It looked just like John Travolta's chin.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, man, before I got the hood off, there's his chin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, that's him. 6 o'clock in the morning, flight leaves at 8, started the interrogation. Wasn't going well. He knew I knew he knew, but he couldn't break, and he was getting emotional. And at 7:45, they basically said, dude, you're out of here. So I told him, I said, man, I'm leaving. I'm not messing with you. I'm leaving. And nobody thinks he's in Tikrit except for you and me. I said, so when I put you in that prison, they're not going to give you another shot. And I'm leaving. So I need it now. He said, I can't. And I'm like, you're going to change your mind. I know how this story ends, and I'll be gone. When I'm gone, make somebody come talk to you. I said, no one's going to come talk to you. He said, force him to come talk to you. I said, go crazy. Put him in his cell, left. Went to my hooch, hadn't packed, grabbed my stuff that had been under this hooch for 5 months. They're driving me across the tarmac, and the senior interrogator's like, what'd you do to that prisoner? Like, I didn't do anything to him. Keep going. He's like, what did you say to the prisoner? I'm like, I didn't say anything to him. Why? He's like, the guards are freaking out. They think your guy's trying to kill himself. He's like, he won't stop banging his head against the wall of his cell. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he just broke. Ran across, jumped out of the truck, ran across the flight line, and was like, hold the plane. Ran in, grabbed the prisoner, brought him out, and he looks at me and he's like, we gotta go. I'm like, don't mess with me, man. Where is he? He's like, he's in Tikrit. He's in Tikrit. He's in this little village called Adwar at the farmhouse of a man named Qais, name it Jassim. Drew the sketch, got the map, and now the prisoner, Muhammad Ibrahim's looking at me going, we got to go, man. We cannot mess around. Let's go.
Saddam's right-hand guy, basically.
He is the one guy, only one person knew where he was. The one guy who knew where he was, and we had him, he said, let's go right now. They so bad didn't think he was in Tikrit. When the team comes back, I'm like, my guy just broke. And they're like, cool, man, go get on the truck. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, no. he knows. And the senior interrogator goes, where is he? I said, he's in Tikrit. He goes,
Man.
Sergeant, go get on the daggum truck. And I gave him the stuff and I said, please call Bam Bam. Please, for the love of God, call Bam Bam. Took me to the flight. You know who's on the flight? Admiral McCraven.
Admiral McMake your bed, right? Got to fuck with him.
Admiral McCraven's on the flight and his whole crew. When I was leaving, because of the 1.9 million, I had to give all these briefings. Gave one to the task force commander, Admiral McCraven, who I really thought was awesome. Still, I just love him, right? I don't know him. It was like, you're coming to Doha with me on the 13th, and you're briefing that link diagram. Mm-hmm. So here's our flight. I told him, it's actually my Marine Corps interrogators, like, sir, and I've always thought maybe it's the jet wash, but what it truly was is when you're a 1-star with this task force and an E6 comes and says, a guy just broke, he can take us to Saddam. Somebody on your chain, somebody in your team's going to be the one that's going to tell you that, not the staff sergeant. So we get on the flight. Flight takes off, lands. By this time when it lands, there's a posse waiting on him. They pull him off, pull him to a room. He comes out, and Admiral Craven's like, what happened last night? I said, we got Mohammed Ibrahim, and he's going to take us to Saddam. He's like, awesome. We're turning the flight around. He goes, we're juicing it up. I'm going back. And now I'm like, it's on. He goes, you have to give the briefing tomorrow. He goes, you're staying.
How big of a kick in the fucking balls was that? I mean, I get your explanation, like, you know, the reality was they didn't need me anymore, but goddamn.
I just want it to be a clear indicator. They still didn't think it was in Tikrit.
Yeah.
And they operated at Baghdad, and Admiral Craven did not operate with a task force that used interrogators like Bam Bam. That had never been done before. I don't care. You can go back in U.S. history. Bam Bam was the first person to say the interrogations are taking the spearhead.
Yeah.
And so why would Admiral McCraven know that? I was just like every other interrogator in his mind.
Yeah. No, I guess that makes sense. He just didn't know. But do you still keep in touch with Bam Bam at all?
I've seen him once.
Yeah. You guys get along all right?
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Is he still on active duty?
Yeah, he's a general.
Oh, Jesus. All right.
He's
fucking...
Everybody got promoted.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Bam Bam's a hero.
Yeah.
He's my hero, and he's a general now.
Went from captain to general.
Oh, he's a major. He was a major.
Oh, okay.
He's 33 years old.
Yeah.
I was 31. So the next day, I had to go to Doha, supposed to give this brief. Next day, they didn't say anything. They were like, all briefings are canceled. Get out of here.
Yeah. So you didn't even give it?
Well, the person, okay. An E5 was going to escort Admiral McCraven in Doha. I need you to understand, Admiral McCraven was going on that trip to Doha for R&R.
Oh, really?
That's how close they thought they were to Saddam Hussein.
God damn.
So when he turns that plane up and goes back, the E5 looks at my Marine buddy and I, and he said, hey, man, Admiral McCraven had dinner reservations. He on R&R. You want his reservations for the next day? And my buddy and I are like, heck yeah.
Yeah.
We're drinking beer.
I would love to have Admiral McCraven on here and get from his perspective this process. It'd be interesting.
You know what?
Yeah.
I can assure you, every single thing is exactly the way it went down. It's a lot easier to remember the details of the story.
Yeah. Well, because you were living them, but I'm curious if he remembers having that nonchalant of an attitude towards him being in Tikrit or not, if he'd be willing to admit that, you know.
I wonder too.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. Okay, I'm going to give him credit. He deserves tons of credit, right? When I got back with the fisherman, mm-hmm. the head of Intel, he loved what Bam Bam was doing because of the money. And he said, man, we got all these Intel analysts. They need a briefing on Tikrit, right? So all these analysts show up. So while I'm waiting for the 3 days, hoping they're going to do my last raid, when I'm in Baghdad, getting ready to leave, a table of, let's say, 12 analysts. They're the task force think tank. They sit around. 6 of them fall asleep because they're exhausted. Nobody gives a flip. I get done, and I swear they're all sitting like this. Like, bullshit.
Yeah.
This E6, I get up with him. We walk away, and he goes, I don't care what they think. He goes, you're going to go brief the admiral. He tells the admiral cuts his time and gives me a full hour. I briefed him a full hour. And he's like, I have to go once a quarter, back to headquarters and brief the progress of Saddam. He's like, you're going with me. You're briefing that. He goes, that's our briefing.
Yeah.
So he believed it. The problem is when I was giving the briefing, I didn't say, hey, I've got your next hit.
Yeah.
I've got your thing. So as we're leaving, they did the capture. Well, if they could have told him that morning, we got Mohammed Ibrahim. They didn't know it. And when I figured it out,
It's too late.
well, it wasn't. It's just the right person didn't tell him.
Yeah. Well, so, all right, so the raid...
Anyway, that's the politics of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, shit happens. Like I said, I'd love to get McRaven on here. Not that he probably ever would, but I'm curious. So the raid happens. Where were you actually at? You were in Doha that night when the raid took place, where they actually got him, and then so the next morning you do the brief. You end up going back, and you are on your way home at that point, right?
I was. I mean, they sent me to D.C.
Yeah.
So that's when my world changed.
But in the intro in the book, if you could talk about when it was made public and where you were sitting, that's kind of a neat story.
So I knew in Doha.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to tell anybody, and nobody knows. And I flew from Doha to Heathrow. We have a layover in Heathrow.
Yeah.
And that's when it's popped.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
And I'm standing in this bar. And you know, if you've been to Heathrow, there's right in the middle of the terminal, there's a bar. And there's 2 Brits. And I mean, just as Brit as they can be. And he's like, whatever. They had him the whole time.
Yeah.
They just pulled him out for the elections.
Yeah.
And it was the first time in my life where I'm like,
This mother.
no, I was like, I actually know the truth of something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if conspiracies exist in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to Kennedy, and but I'm like,
Yeah.
there is no conspiracy.
Yeah. That had to be weird as fuck sitting there with that amount of knowledge.
It was the most surreal feeling.
Yeah. Seeing it on TV, surrounded by, Brits talking shit and knowing what really happened and being, the integral part of that is just, that's wild.
Man, can I tell you what was the coolest surreal feeling is I called my mom. Just because when I left country, I knew, your parents are always worried.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, Mom, I'm home. I'm coming home. And she's like, oh, my gosh, Eric Maddox. Did you hear they just found Saddam Hussein?
Yeah.
And I was like, no. I was like, yeah, isn't that something? And she goes, oh, I'm so glad you're home. I just wish you could have been in country and we could have said you were there when it happened. Like that somehow gives me, and I'm like, I think I'm going to be able to, I didn't say it, but I'm like, when you hear this story, you're going to flip. I was more than in country. So.
Yeah. God, that's cool as hell. So, I mean, it's basically a fucking whirlwind coming home in terms of, obviously the news released on your way, but then you get slingshotted right into super high level meetings with about every swinging dick in DC that that has anything to do with it. Yeah. Was that pretty surreal too? Was there anything that surprised you about meeting with those people?
It was a lot of surprising things. So first thing straight off the bat was Secretary Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. So I'm being escorted by admirals and generals. Okay, and in the room was Secretary Rumsfeld, Undersecretary Wolfowitz. Dr. Cambone's in there, Peter Pace is in there, anybody that's anybody. And so the first thing I realized is that Peter Pace is the most important military person in Secretary Rumsfeld's world. Mm-hmm. He's his guy. He was deputy chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, but he's the guy.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm already you notice there's some dynamics. The other thing that was very interesting is these admirals and generals were horrified to go in there. Now they weren't saying it. Their behavior, they were nervous, scared, and I'm like, whatever. I just found Saddam Hussein. This is going to be awesome.
Do you know why they were?
Well, I think he's intimidating.
Rumsfeld.
Yeah.
Oh, so they were scared to talk to Rumsfeld.
You know what I really believe it is? They wouldn't have been, if they were going to brief Secretary Rumsfeld, they'd have felt in control.
Yeah.
They're about to hand this over to an E6.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Right. And can you imagine, like, man, we're walking in with this kid.
Yeah.
We don't know if he's going to drop some F-bombs or whatever.
He's got a dip in his mouth.
Yeah. Is he going to be like...
Fucking gig lines off. His boots look like shit.
I mean, and I'm strung out from this 6 months, right? I'm wrecked. So I think it was that, but I'm sitting next to Admiral Jacoby, and that was the head of the DIA. And we're sitting, and these guys are so nervous. And he's looking at me, and he keeps saying, just relax. Steps on it, just relax. And I'm like, so I finally looked at him and I said, sir, am I in trouble? And Admiral Jacoby looks at me and he said, Eric, in that office, everybody's in trouble.
That's great.
But it was great. Met Secretary Rumsfeld. So, and he gave me a coin. I got his coin. He gave me a pocket watch, all this stuff. He stood up, he clapped. He was the guy, right? Like he wasn't looking, he didn't bring me in there for an applause. He wanted a briefing. But here's what was most interesting. Right in the middle of the meeting, this guy walks in. It's all these enlisted guys. They wear the rank of whoever they're working for, right? So this guy comes in. He worked for General Alexander, who was the chief senior intel officer for the United States Army. He's a 3-star. Get a note, and I watched Secretary Rumsfeld hand it over Peter Pace or Admiral Jacoby. And basically, I saw these admirals and generals have these little conversation, and it was like, it's fine. It doesn't matter. No, send him down there. It's good. Basically, General Alexander got wind that this was going on. He wasn't being invited. And I had to go with this E5 to General Alexander's to give him the briefing because he was not in the loop. Mm-hmm. And that was I was like, oh my gosh, they'll keep some politics going even at this level.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next thing is they took me to CIA headquarters, George Tenet, different experience. George Tenet is just, he's a politician. Yeah. He was shaking hands and but what he was serious about is he took me in front of the entire Iraqi intel team and gave me this brief. And he was not happy with them. And they were steaming. Like they were so upset because that was their job. And I think he didn't need them to hear the brief. He wanted them to hear the brief. It was basically going, nice work, fellas.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, like, there had to have been a lot of people in country and involved at higher levels that had a lot of fucking egg on their face from that, right? That, that they're going to get their dick slapped a little bit, right? I mean, or is...
I think the main group only one who could truly just not come up with was the agency.
Yeah.
Anyone else was like, hey, we did our mission. Yeah. Honestly, task force should have found them. Yeah. They found them. Agency should have been the intel element that gave the intel to task force 1212 find them. They weren't.
Yeah.
I think they're the only one that really looked bad.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So what happened after, so you give the brief to Rumsfeld, and then how does your fucking time kind of wind down?
So the world changed for me in a really great way. So when Secretary Rumsfeld and Peter Pace were in his office, I'm sitting with Gunny Trevino, the guy with DIA, the other interrogator I went over there with. Yeah. Gunny Trevino, of course, links up with Peter Pace, and Gunny Trevino says, sir, we are with DIA. We were a part of this HAT program. It's called Human Intelligence Augmentation Team. Admiral Jacoby, head of DIA, says, yes, sir. DIA got temporary funding for 03 to do this HAT thing. Peter Pace gave the approval to DIA to submit a package, and they got approved for an ongoing human intelligence for JSOC, the Joint Special Operations Command. They got $100 million
Goddamn.
before Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And
Happy birthday to Jesus.
DIA, part of that program was they said, you get to create your own 30-man civilian interrogation team.
Wow.
And Maddox is the first one.
No way.
So I got out of the Army.
Slid right the fuck into that job.
And took the first ever civilian DIA job.
Damn.
And my first assignment, I'm back with JSOC, back out there. And I'm
Back
like,
overseas.
getting paid as a GS instead of an E6.
Making 5 times as much.
He was exactly 5X, right? And I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world.
Fuck, that's badass.
So I did that. I did that for several years. And then by the time 08 comes around, it's actually 07, my agency was like, we'll give you approval. You can write this book. If you go through the public affairs. And I said, I don't want to lose my job. I'm working under top secret clearance, semi-clandestine.
Yeah.
Like I'm not operating outward. And they said, if you do this the right way, we'll let you keep your job.
I mean, so was it almost their idea for you to write it?
Well, it wasn't there. It was a couple of individuals.
Yeah.
So again, DIA is very political. There's a clandestine side of DIA and there's an overt side, which is interrogators.
But they brought it to you, the opportunity, though.
Yeah.
No shit. Yeah, no, I get it.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah, nobody's going to know
You
who you
show
are.
me a military or an intel person who's written their book and kept their job.
Yeah, I don't know anybody.
I wrote the book in 08.
Yeah, I mean, it's always post.
I didn't leave top secret clandestine status until 2014.
Holy shit.
For 5.5 years, I'm working completely operational.
While this is out.
And
That's a fucking trip.
it was awesome.
God bless the U.S. government. The fucking, I guess, contrasts or I guess contradictions, a better word of the government sometimes is baffling. This being a classic example. I am curious, the original draft that you developed with your ghostwriter, what was redact, or how much, I guess, was redacted? Like, how bad did they pick it apart?
So that's right. You basically, you get the freedom to write everything.
Yeah.
You give it to public affairs, and then they pass it around. The only things that were redacted was from agency.
Oh,
they
sure.
took out the entire scene of when George Tenet put me in front of their team.
Yeah.
They were like, nope.
We're not making us look any worse than we already have.
The whole thing's blacked out. And, you know, a lot of people, and it's pretty cool, like, when people have books and it's blacked out, and it's like, that must be legit.
Yeah.
I just took it out.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, especially if it's a whole section, like what's the point, right? It's one thing if it's a word here or there that you
Right.
can use context
and
clues.
it
but-
wasn't classified. They just didn't want it out there.
Yeah, I just didn't want to look bad. That's a fucking trip, man. What a cool story. I do have a list of just kind of general questions that I thought of while reading that I have no doubt I'm interested in knowing about, as well as the listener probably would. One of the things that I found, I guess, strange, but in some respects not all that strange in terms of criminals doing dumb shit, was some of the tactics used for some of these sources, HVTs, whatever, where they were hiding, were remarkably thorough, complex, inventive, super fucking, ingenuitive, if that's a fucking word. Some of them seemed downright fucking retarded.
Okay.
The phishing thing as a classic example, like, what were some of the most surprising, like, God, how could you be that dumb, things that led you to be able to find people because they were just not being smart? And on the other side of the token, what was one of the more surprisingly well done ones?
I'm going to argue that Saddam's tactic was ingenious. And I'm not trying to make that out like I found the smartest HVT in the world. Think about it like this. Saddam pushed every single person on the deck of cards out of this little bitty town.
Mm-hmm.
There was no draw into Tikrit.
Yeah.
He tells every bodyguard, hit the road. Picks one bodyguard, and he picked Muhammad Ibrahim because Muhammad Ibrahim was a nice guy, whiskey drinking, domino playing nice guy. He didn't have an enemy. So even if anybody found out Muhammad Ibrahim knew where Saddam was, no one's turning in Muhammad Ibrahim.
Yeah.
And then all information from Saddam, all orders goes to one guy. If that one guy doesn't take him, he will not get caught.
Yeah.
The United States military had been to that farmhouse because they'd been to every farmhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to live underneath, go underground. He didn't live there. He would go underground if anyone crossed that bridge. Well, you could always find out. It's one bridge.
Yeah.
He was never going to get found until, I'm not going to act like I found him, and no one ever would have, until cell phones came into that country. And I'll tell anybody who's involved with military operations and who's done any tracking down HVTs, you tell me the last time you found an HVT with no cell phones involved.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
There were no cell phones. One person knew. All that person had to do was not take him to the hole. The guy took Bam Bam and the team, and they looked for an hour. It wasn't until Bam Bam went and got him, and he said, follow me.
Yeah.
So I think it was a beautiful thing. So what if somebody mentions fish?
Well, no.
It was just, the thing I'll tell you this, HVTs, they don't give up their most creature comforts.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, here's my point. Like, I would agree Saddam's plan was fucking brilliant, obviously. I mean, he kept the entire fucking country at bay for, 7-8 months. What surprised me was exactly what you just said was, it was the fact that the creature comfort of that fish coupled with being so goddamn lazy that you're going to have people catch them and put them into a pond, like that draws attention. It's not just having a couple of fishmongers catch fish and you're buying them from them. It's the fact that they went out of their way to build a pond because a dude likes to fish. Like, it's, to me, that's something that's going to be a red flag of sorts.
That was so stupid.
That's what I mean. So,
yeah.
Like that's my, the best example that I drew from the book of being like, God damn, that was dumb.
Yeah.
Was there one that stood out? Not necessarily in the book because there's not a lot of reference to situations like that. But was there something you can share of something that was really brilliant, other than obviously the Saddam example?
Well, I'll tell you, when we went to the fish pond, 2 days before that, Muhammad Ibrahim and his deputy had gotten the address of a fisherman of his aunt and uncle in Baghdad. At that point, Muhammad Ibrahim basically said, I'm taking this, I got to get out of this little village. I'm going to this town with 8 million people. There's no way they'll find me. And we would have never found him had my tour not been up, because we didn't have any jurisdiction outside of Tikrit. Mm-hmm. So it was coincidental that my tour was up and I went to Baghdad to leave the country. And that's where Muhammad Ibrahim said, get me around 8 million people. He'll never find me. Yeah. There's no cell phone. There's no nothing. I got directions from one guy who's a fisherman. Mm. There's no way they're going to get the fisherman and then he's going to give that address in Baghdad. Yeah. But because I had gone there and we did get the fisherman, and Bam Bam basically was told, stop going this line, because they should have kept the fisherman in Tikrit for a few days. But instead it was like, dude, we're done, Eric. Take the fisherman, take everybody.
Yeah.
That was the luck. I mean, that's straight luck.
Yeah. To me, it highlights what's one of the most fascinating elements of this book, your story, and just the way that intelligence works, in that there's almost a level with which you can't be careful enough. It takes one even slight fucking slip up that may not even seem like a slip up, but that, the guys have, guys like you and the team and whatever have that ability to really connect those dots, almost like a forensic fucking scientist, solving a murder case. But it's just, to me, it's really, really fascinating shit.
Man, I'm going to tell you what I think is the most important thing. The majority of operations that are done by military, active targets, hard targets, they must have cooperative information. They have to say, I need multiple sources to verify that we can go on this. And we never did. And therefore, we didn't have to wait 2 weeks. Ask, when did they figure out where bin Laden was? Yeah. And when did the raid take place? Yeah. It's like seasons later. It's months later.
Yeah.
We had the freedom to go one source, one piece of intel, turn and go. And if we could just get under the mindset, listen, multiple pieces of information, that's great. You can't always get that. So can we get to a point where we can say, wait, I know it's a single source. I trust it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Because if we wouldn't have done that, we didn't have a chance.
So that flexibility, you'd say, was the key to being successful for sure.
The fact they thought we were full of it.
Yeah.
And Bam Bam didn't give a damn.
Yeah.
And Bam Bam said, you know what? I trust it. Let's go. I go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go.
To me, there's an important element of leadership in that example. I think that I'm drawing from it, and this, I would say, transpires to all aspects of life. Is that, especially if you're managing anything. I don't care if you're a coach, you're a fucking teacher, you're a parent with multiple kids, a business owner, whatever. Is that the people that you put in place to do certain things, you either trust them or you don't. And if you trust them to do the fucking right thing, let them do it. The minute that stops, they got to go, you know, and then you just got to figure something else out. But to me, like that's really the key is that, we talked about the bureaucracy bogged down of why so many, I don't care whether it's a fucking company, a government entity, a fucking special operations group, whatever, is that, the more middlemen and decision makers that have to sign off on something, the less fucking effective, efficient, and productive you're going to fucking be. So you CEOs out there, choke yourself and take that to heart. Stop doing it the way you do it.
You know what I also would say is Bam Bam did not trust that every time I gave him a target, the target was going to be there.
Yeah.
He didn't even trust my intel was right. What he did trust is he knew I did everything I could to try to get the most accurate intel. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love it. All right, another question. You mentioned 25 countries, different countries of prisoners. What was the most surprising country of origin for somebody you interrogated?
I never got to interrogate a North Korean, and that would have been the biggest shocker. They're so hard to come by.
You said you didn't?
I never did. So that would have. So
Well,
I really wasn't surprised by any of the countries. I will say this. The most difficult are members of the Taliban.
Yeah.
They're hard. They're the most difficult people to interrogate.
So guys from Afghanistan that were there were the hardest?
Taliban guys, not Afghanistan. Like I said, give me a facilitator in Afghanistan, I can get them to talk.
So where were the Taliban guys from, if not Afghanistan?
Well, they were from Afghanistan, but I didn't have a problem with all Afghans.
Okay,
I had a problem with Taliban.
Okay, so just the Taliban Afghanis.
Yes.
You had a problem with. Was there? I guess maybe another way to ask instead of surprising. What was the country of origin that was the furthest away from Iraq that you ever encountered, distance-wise?
It would have been any of the Middle East, African countries. I don't know, Algeria.
Was there any Indonesians?
Not in Iraq or Afghanistan. I did interrogate Indonesians in the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
One of my tours was in the Philippines, and that's Jamal Islamiyah.
Yeah. The guy we just had on was a CIA guy that talks about the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, Abu Sayyaf, Jamaat Islamiyah, all the Zamboanga and southern, or the entire island or chain of islands of Mindanao that causing problems. My time in
Basilan and Holo.
Yeah.
So I did 7 months in the Philippines, and it was one prisoner. He was a founding member of the Abu Sayyaf group.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And we ran an operation. He flipped, and he actually became a single source facilitator to flip other members of prisoners in the Abu Sayyaf group in the prison.
Wow. This was after you got out, right? When you got hired on by DIA?
Correct. It was 06, 07.
Yeah.
Do you know what years your friend was there? Or your other guest?
Well, it was off and on a little bit during that time.
I'm curious. What was his name?
Thomas Pecora.
Okay. Was he SF?
No. So he was just a straight agency guy, but he did all of the security work. So he wasn't an interrogator.
Oh, okay.
The Dr. James Mitchell episode that I did, he was the interrogator. But so Pecora did, route recons and, taking sources from one spot to the next and did the kind of the protective aspect of it. But, lots of hairy fucking stories with him too. But
Liz, I don't want to get off topic. I don't want to lose the intensity, but it's hysterical. When you go to the Philippines, They are called the Moro Islamic Liberation Front.
MILF. Yeah.
And you want to know, if you want to figure out how long somebody's been in country, the first 6 weeks that somebody's in country, they're still like,
Yeah.
and then, because when you're new, you're like,
What's MILF
is this
doing
a
today?
joke?
Yeah.
Like, am I on candid camera? And nobody, it's stone cold for everybody who's been there a while.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Classic.
get
Like
a
a
new
new guy.
name. Who
Yeah.
marketed this?
Yeah,
But
that doesn't translate.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they like to fuck moms there, maybe, but like to fuck each other and goats. I don't know. That's another podcast episode. How much did bribing play a role with the people that you interrogated and such?
Financial bribing? Like, give me an example of what's kind of your
Really,
thinking like.
I mean, specifically financial with actual cash, but really anything. And could you give some examples if outside the realm of cash?
Well, when I'm dealing with prisoners, really money is not anywhere near on their, Maslow's scale, right? Like, they need freedom. So the number one thing a prisoner needs is freedom. But then if you are going to get them freedom, they have to be protected that the people out there aren't going to find out how they got released because of cooperation. So what I do bribe them on is I will say, if you help me, I will release you. That seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And I also say, and if you help me, I will release you. And here's the strategy for protecting you.
Yeah.
And now I would call it more heavy-handed, is then I can't get everyone to break, right? So if I break 65% of prisoners, I have 35% that don't break. Well, I'm not going to just take those 35% and go, well, too bad I couldn't get them to break. So if I get 65 to break, 65%, I have to protect them. I have to build a rumor mill, a story, a cover for the people who were captured, and it's not this 65. So if you don't help me, I'm going to make sure my rumor mill definitely effectively gives the credit to the 35%.
Oh, okay.
Now, if I have 35% that never cooperate, how's their life out there? How's their family's life out there when everyone believes they're the ones that are cooperating? And it's beautiful, right? Like, it serves so many purposes.
Did that ever backfire?
Give me an example of what would be, how would it backfire?
Well, so if, let's say, like they catch on to that, whereas if they're like, no, it's the people that
it's the ones that are, okay. So that would be a great point, right? Well, so if I interrogate a percentage of people in a region, the number of interrogators, military interrogators who are doing these interrogations that aren't with me and aren't using my techniques.
Oh, okay.
You're
a needle in a haystack, basically.
So what, when you're in a combat zone, you ask anybody in a combat zone, are the prisons full? They're packed.
Yeah.
Do we release innocent people? All the time.
Yeah.
Do we release guilty people? All the time. Yeah. Do we keep innocent people? All the time. Not on purpose.
Yeah.
Bad interrogations, bad intel. There's mistakes. So there's so much. If a prisoner gets released, that doesn't mean they must have been cooperative. There's so many bad people who get released and innocent people who are stuck here that I can blend in because I'm a needle in the haystack.
Yeah, yeah, you're so insignificant volume-wise in the grand scheme.
Volume-wise, you're just a piece.
No, that makes sense. You mentioned the one raid where you guys fined $1.9 million cash U.S. Two things. One, where the fuck did that go? Two, did you ever backtrack as to actually where that fucking came from?
I know exactly where it came from. I know exactly where it goes.
And how much did you guys pocket?
Yeah, I wish.
I know those guys threw some shit in a fucking med kit or something.
I always told those dudes, I'm like, there was $2 million in there. Y'all have 100.
Yeah,
I know
fuck that. There's probably $12 million.
No, check this out. So that money goes to civil affairs. We use that money to pay. Right? So U.S. Army, you turn it in. I'm sure they register it.
Turn some of it in.
I'm going to tell you this. When I got back to the States, 3 days after the capture of Saddam, they did a raid of Muhammad Ibrahim's farm, and they captured 11.2 million U.S. on his farm. Mm-hmm. So, had money everywhere. The driver of Muhammad Ibrahim, the one that said, hey, if you get him, he can take you to Saddam. The driver says, I deliver all the money and all the orders. I'm taking it all from Muhammad Ibrahim. The driver said at the beginning of the war, just before the Americans came, he said he loaded up $4 billion on 5 18-wheelers.
Holy shit.
Now, he also said, but you guys got one of them. And I don't know if everybody remembers, but at the very beginning of the war, the United States captured an 18-wheeler with $800 million in it.
God damn.
$800 million. And I'm looking at this driver and I'm like, where'd he take it? He said he took it to Aleppo. And you're like, how do you know there was $4 billion? And the driver goes, I loaded it. He goes, I was part of the team that loaded it. And I was like,
so this was cash that Saddam had in his coffers?
yes.
Okay.
And he supposedly took it to Aleppo. Well, I also know for a fact, 3 years after the capture of Saddam, Mohammed Ibrahim was released. He goes to Aleppo, gets his gazillion, and now lives in an undisclosed location as a gazillionaire in Eastern Europe. So there might be a bunch of money in Aleppo.
Yeah. God damn. That's fucking crazy. Were there ever instances where you saw cash that had been funneled in from foreign sources that you know of?
Not at that year.
Yeah.
So in 2003, you didn't have a foreign fighter issue. It really wasn't until after the pictures of Abu Ghraib came out that the foreign fighter infiltration
Tunisia
occurred.
and Chechens and everybody's fucking pissed.
I mean, everybody.
Everywhere. Yeah. God, what a shit sandwich. All right, so I'm curious. Did you mention all these interrogations? Did you ever interrogate any women?
I did.
And did it differ?
Oh, well, it does. So most of the interrogation of women that I conducted were at the raids. So if you're on a raid site, you got women. I never messed with any kids whatsoever. I didn't like it. It was bad for business. It was bad for PR. And what I found was that it was not useful to waste your time interrogating the women because they truly knew they're not going to prison. Now, there was a little period there, or 04, 05, 06, where there was some detention of females, but they didn't have the same issues of long-term imprisonment, Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo Bay. They didn't have that threat.
Yeah.
And so they really, in my opinion, they wasted time. They didn't take it seriously. And it wasn't what I was about.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't flow. And I found it as a waste of time.
And so there weren't any hardened criminals in prison that were women.
I mean, if there were, I didn't deal with them.
Yeah.
Anybody
identify as a woman? I'm kidding.
Yeah, but
That shit doesn't happen over there.
But
strangely,
I just when you're with JSOC, you're dealing with a small element of the prison population. So for me, I did.
Yeah, there weren't any high level women. I mean, because to me, it's one of those things where I know that they play certain supportive and logistical roles, but also some key roles in terms of because it's a woman, they don't get looked at as hard. And so, from a leadership standpoint.
So I'll tell you where the key with the women was, and it was very critical, is by 05, we're tracking cell phones.
Yeah.
And we're tracking SIM cards. And I don't make any joke about it. You know how you can track your kid's cell phone? We can track anybody else's cell phone. So you weren't looking for a body. All I needed to know was who owns this cell phone. Well, you identify it through a SIM card. They were hiding them underneath their bras.
Yeah.
And a guy can't do that. Like, a guy can't do that search.
Yeah.
So it was very effective. Well, we just started taking females on the raids.
Oh, okay.
Which is problematic.
Yeah.
And it's not problematic in that females can't handle raids if they're trained. But at that time,
There weren't any.
no.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned, the cell phones, that it makes me think from a tower and network and all that kind of standpoint. Do you know, and if you do, can you talk about, are you guys collectively controlling the tower? Are you intercepting shit?
Man, I really can't get into that.
Yeah.
It's 2019.
Yeah.
So
Who fucking knows at this point?
well, who knows? And that was my old stuff. And I don't, how you have to be kind of sensitive about talking about stuff that's not.
Yeah, I mean, more out of just fucking curiosity.
Yeah.
But it's all fascinating. One of the things that I saw in the book, and I'll pull it up here real quick in your pictures, that I thought was fucking awesome, and probably one of, if not the coolest, two of the coolest fucking things that I've ever seen in terms of trophies, war trophies.
Yeah.
You've got a cigar, and there's a picture of it in the book. It says, a cigar found in Saddam's Tikrit spider hole and presented to me by the team who captured him. I had it mounted and framed. And what's that coin in there? Is that DIA coin or is that a unit coin from them?
No, that's probably a DIA coin.
Okay. But there's a cigar that came out of his hole.
That mount that's a cigar from his hole.
Right.
When he was captured, Bam Bam and the team captured $750,000 cash, a Glock pistol, and a box of Cubans. So in January, the Delta team brought me to their compound in Bragg and said, train us. Well, when I was there, I ran into the team, and they're like, we've been waiting for you. Here's your cigar.
Yeah.
And, man, you can get all the awards and medals you want.
Oh, yeah.
When you get that cigar from that team, I gave it to my uncle just because he used to smoke cigars.
Yeah.
And he didn't smoke that one.
Fuck, I hope not.
That's a DIA coin, so he probably just thought that looked cool. But
yeah, fucking unbelievably cool.
Yeah.
Did you talk to any of the team that had any access to Saddam? Were you able to get any insight on what he was like once they grabbed him or anything, that kind of stuff, or was you just too far removed at that point?
No. I talked to the team. So if you look at this book and you go to the picture of Saddam, so there is at our team house. That is the chair that I did every single interrogation in.
Goddamn, no way.
So every prisoner in this book that I interrogate, that's where Saddam is in the house.
Oh shit.
Now, so the way Saddam he gets captured by this team.
Yeah.
Contrary to what anybody else thinks, nobody on the Fourth ID's ever laid eyes on Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
Which is, when you're involved in these things, it's like, man, when is the conventional unit? When has that group ever caught anybody? Like it's a JSOC mission.
Yeah.
Well, they took him straight to where I started the JSOC compound. So they took him to where Muhammad Ibrahim, where I found out it was Muhammad Ibrahim. So when you're seeing Saddam and he's getting inspected, the only time my team was with Saddam was that first 5 hours.
Yeah.
And they said that he was trying to be calm, trying to act like everything was normal, which is very, very typical for a high-value target. It's just to act like this is part of the plan. We got it.
Yeah. What was your take on him being hanged?
I didn't really care if he was hung. I didn't care if he lived. I will say I can't really be critical of the interrogations that take place. I just know I would have had a different collection objectives. I would have gone after that $4 billion. I know he would have given it. I know I could have gotten that money. I didn't get a chance to interrogate him. I didn't ask. I was in the business of tracking HVTs, not interrogating them once they're captured.
I'm assuming you would have loved to have been able to, or
maybe. I really enjoyed my mission in 03, 04, 05, 06, 07, because when you're going after the high value targets, it's like if you're going fishing, the fun part's catching the fish.
Yeah.
I don't need to sit there and look at the fish on the string.
Yeah. You didn't want to eat them. You didn't give a
I don't want to eat him.
Yeah.
Well, I got to eat the fish. I'm like, cool. Looking back, maybe. Because it's the biggest question I ever get is, you never actually saw Saddam, aren't you devastated? I'm like, oh man, I found him. Like, I didn't know I was supposed to see him. And looking back, maybe it'd have been better, but
that makes sense.
Yeah.
The other trophy that you have that's equally as cool, possibly even cooler, is the famous deck of cards listing the high value targets that you have that are signed by 7 of the former members.
Yeah.
Please tell me you still have that.
I still have those.
Okay. Because that's fucking incredibly
Isn't
cool.
that awesome?
Yeah. I mean,
Tariq Aziz rookie card.
What a fucking cool idea. Yeah, it's awesome. These pictures are in the book, so go out and buy that shit, because there's a lot of other stories that we didn't get into, the intricacies of how he went about what he did, and a lot of things that you can learn. I mean, hell, if it just is a matter of you wanting to interrogate your fucking kids, it's essentially a manual for that. You should just go out and fucking buy it. Lots of good stuff in it. Once you came back from that, you worked for the DIA. Can you just give us a brief rundown of what you did, just the deployments that you did, and kind of what your gig was? Actually?
Absolutely. pulled out of the Army, became a civilian in April of 2004, deployed with either JSOC or kind of do those one-offs to Philippines, or would do kind of just anywhere where I was needed to do one-person long-term interrogations. Deployed Afghanistan 04, Iraq 05, Philippines 06, Philippines 07, Afghanistan 09 and 10, Afghanistan 11 and 12. So,
Where are some of the locations you can't mention?
the only place I can...
I was joking.
The only place I can't mention is a mission in a non-disclosed location in Eastern Europe.
Oh, no shit.
That's the only place.
Yeah.
Anything else, I'm wide open on.
Yeah. That's wild that they're that open or liberal with you talking about it, given how restrictive they are on a lot of other guys that I've had on with some of their books, whether it's military or other, government agencies, entities, et cetera. But I'm glad that they are. I think it's fascinating shit, and it's really neat to be able to ask you these questions and engage with you on it. It's fascinating. But
I really think they like for me to explain how I do interrogations.
Yeah,
I think it's different than what people expect.
For sure it is. I wonder, and I'm curious, you being the guy behind the curtain on a lot of it, is there any concern on your or their end? I'm assuming not, or it wouldn't exist, and your autonomy to be able to do what you do wouldn't be there, but that people could reverse engineer and use some of this against you to thwart it?
Nope.
None?
I will tell you this. I'm going to look at a prisoner, and I'm going to tell him exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell him, I'm going to say, here's the deal. I'm going to get you out of here. I'm going to get you out of here. You're going to do exactly what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to keep you alive, and you're going to be free. Just do exactly what I tell you to do. And I'm never going to make you take me to one person you don't want to take me to. I'm never going to put anybody you care about's lives in danger with you. I'll go, if I need your brother, I'm going to get somebody else to give me your brother. But I'm not, you don't have to take me to your brother.
Yeah.
You're only going to take me to people you do not like. Try getting the enemy to shut that down.
Yeah.
Because they're basically going to say, be careful. That guy's going to help you.
Yeah.
It's not that guy's going to say he's going to help you, or that guy's going to make you believe he's going to help you.
Yeah.
Be careful, because you joined our group, and because of that, you're going to spend the rest of your life in jail unless you help this guy. He's going to make you a free man and protect you.
So the key is just being fair. It's a little subjective.
Man, you can call it fair, but what fair is there in war? There's no fair, right?
I guess
I think what it is...
fair in terms of what you say you're going to do and you follow through with it.
For me, it comes down to, if you have a feral cat problem, or if you have a cat problem.
Who doesn't love pussy? You got to throw that in there.
We can't have these cats going around and just breeding, and there's a gazillion cats. Once you neuter the cat, there's no problem. Do you kill the cat? No, you neuter the cat. All I'm doing is taking bad guys, and I'm neutering them.
You get a T-shirt made up that says "Bad Guy Neuter."
No, if you neuter the bad guy, you have one of two choices. They have one of three choices. One's highly illegal. You could execute him, and we'll all go to jail. I can go, wait, this guy killed some Americans. I neutered him, meaning he's not rejoining the group. He's out. If I can guarantee that, then I get to do one of two things. I can't neuter him. I can't shoot him. Mm-hmm. So we get to keep him in prison under our resources, which is extremely expensive. Extremely expensive. We don't have the manpower. It takes time. It takes place. Or I can let him go. Now, what if I can let him go and scare the hell out of the enemy?
Yeah.
Why would I not let him go?
Yeah.
So now I get all his information. He's neutered, and I'm going to send him out there, and I'm going to keep him as kryptonite for the enemy.
Yeah. So basically, it's figuring out how, like, they can know your playbook and that you're going to use leverage, but it doesn't matter if they know that, because the leverage you're using is going to be effective, and it's going to trump whatever they know or think that they're going to be able to defeat it, because they're not going to be able to.
Trump it all day long.
All right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
right, so you got out after all of these deployments and interrogating thousands of people, you get out in 2014, you said?
Uh-huh.
What after that?
2014, I went and got my MBA. I got my executive MBA at Washington University in St. Louis. And I was being asked, starting about 2012, I was really starting to be asked to do keynote speeches. People are like, man, I love the way you tell the story and you bring all these takeaways of inspiration and business and negotiation and communication. And so I started doing that. And for the last 5 years, I do about 70 keynotes a year.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm assuming like all walks of life, business, fucking.
Mainly businesses.
Yeah.
And, my main groups are sales forces, wealth management, insurance, and banking. In any industry where trust is the key element.
Yeah, I mean, shit, name one that isn't.
I know. That's why I'm like, this could go on for a while.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. What a neat transition of using some pretty specific life skills or I guess military skills and transitioning it over into a civilian or business application. That's fucking awesome. I'm happy for you. That's great. Do you do any consulting as it relates to teaching interrogation or anything like that?
I do. So I'll spend 120 days a year in Abu Dhabi.
Oh wow.
I've done that for the last 2 years, and I train what is their intel officers on interrogation.
Yeah.
So they're dealing with a Yemen situation right now.
Yeah.
They don't have any experience at war, and they certainly have no experience in interrogations.
Yeah.
So I actually just got back 10 days ago.
Oh, wow.
And I'll go there for 5 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And I love it because they basically gave me the school. They said, tell it in 5 weeks, your way, your techniques, teach us however you want to teach us.
Yeah.
And that's such a great feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it's neat that they give you that kind of flexibility, to just fucking run with it. That's rare but refreshing.
Yeah. And then 2 days ago, so Tuesday, I spent all day in Washington, D.C. training the DOD IG whistleblowers investigators.
Oh, okay.
So it's any opportunities to train on.
Would you say it's about 50-50 in terms of keynotes, civilian business speeches versus training of government interrogation type stuff, or what's the balance?
It's probably 80% keynote.
Oh, wow.
Because
there's way more money in it, let's be honest.
So
you ain't got to lie, Craig. It is. I mean, fucking welcome to America.
Private companies have a lot more money.
Yeah, than Uncle Sam. Well, Uncle Sam's got a fuck ton. He's just not going to give you very much of it. He's going to take a lot of it.
And I will tell people what's really interesting is a keynote's an hour.
Yeah.
Training's 8 hours.
Yeah.
For some reason, that industry of keynotes, the premium
yeah.
is up here in training, and it's like you're a commodity.
No, I know.
We can get that anywhere. So.
No, I know it. I do nowhere near 70. I do usually a handful of keynotes a year, and same thing. I'm just like, holy fuck! It's mind-boggling, that whole process. But hey, smoke them if you got them. How can people get a hold of you if they want either a keynote or have you come train people how to interrogate?
You can get a hold of me at eric@ericmaddox.com.
Okay.
You can go to my website, ericmaddox.com.
And that's MADDOXX?
Yeah, 1X. ERIC.
I guess I could have looked at the cover of the book.
It's all right. ERICMADDOX. And then, I've got a Facebook page, and I kind of put videos about techniques. I have, again, not at your level, but I have a smaller podcast I call Creating Influence. And you can kind of listen to that. My Facebook page is Eric B. Maddox. And so I try to stay out there and try to give information on how do we make people talk? How do we get transparency? If you want to know how they're lying, here's how they're lying. But most important, my whole message is in a relationship, how do you build trust?
Yeah, I like it. Have you thought about writing a book that centers around that as opposed to the story?
So I have thought about it. Mike, I feel so much more comfortable in verbal communication.
Yeah.
that I do written communication, that was hard for me to write.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm an imbecile. I can write, but I feel like I really am a good verbal communicator.
Yeah.
I don't feel like a great written communicator.
Yeah. So we'll give you that quick opportunity. Can you give us the 30-second elevator pitch on how to build trust?
Yes. Real quick. Trust is not, it's about seeking to understand. But if you're talking to someone, every person in every conversation you ever have, they're measuring you. Are you looking to fulfill your own needs and your own objectives and quell your own fears? Or are you looking to help me? And there's a measurement. And if you can listen at a certain level, so most people only listen to 25%. You have to get it up to 75%. If you go up to 75%, people go, whoa, whoa, whoa. You seem to be way more interested in me than you are yourself. But the only way to go above 50 is you must seek empathy. That means you must seek to understand the point of this conversation at this moment from their perspective and not my own.
Yeah.
If you do that, there's no greater way to gain trust.
Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. Again, the parallels, it's very different with dogs in terms of how you do that because everything's nonverbal and body language oriented, or mostly. You can use resources and environment to kind of steer those relationships and manipulate it a little bit, frankly. But to me, that's one of the biggest problems I see, whether it's social media or personal relationships, business, again, coach athletes, teacher students, boss employees, whatever, is on both sides is not, listening to respond and not listening to understand, and so few people have an innate ability to listen and really think like, well, how is the other person viewing this conversation? Maybe I should try to understand where the fuck they're coming from. Maybe I should understand how they view me right now. Can
I give you an example?
Yeah, please do.
How long have we been talking?
Not long enough, but a little over 3 hours.
All right. If I'm listening to this conversation, I like you better than I like me. And it's not because I don't have a cool story. And I'm willing to sit here and feed, right? Like all I'm doing is talking. This whole thing is about me because I'm a guest, right? I'm coming one and done. But honestly, you're the one that's being, and I'm not saying being attractive in a sexual or.
No, we can go that route. It's sexual.
You're the one that's more interesting. You're the listener. You're the one that's responding. I'm the talker. This is about me. And it's a little bit repelling at the end of, man, Eric, what you're feeding me is cool. I'm getting informed, but I'm not drawn towards you. I trust you. You know why? Because you're listening to me. I'm going to leave here and be like, Mike really cares about me. Right? Wow, man. He was asking some cool stuff, man. We should stay in touch. We're not going to leave here and go, I feel connected to Eric. You probably leave here and go, whew, he likes talking about himself. And I get it, man. Like, I know it, but I'm a guest on your show. That's what I have to do. But I'm sitting here like, man, I'd rather be in your seat right now. And that's the example. That's just an example. It's like, you're the listener. That's more intrigued. That's more attractive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's enormously refreshing to hear that perspective from you. I certainly try to make it that way, where I give, the guest an opportunity to talk far more than me and just ask the questions that I think whoever's listening is also going to wonder and things like that they're going to, find intriguing or fascinating or whatever. But I appreciate you saying that. I think, to push back a little bit, I think your story is incredibly fucking interesting and very cool. And I could sit here for several more hours asking, little pinpoint questions. There is one that I actually forgot to ask.
Okay.
That I did want to throw in real quick, just because, again, it ties in so heavy to what I do. How big of a role did body language play in your interrogations? Because, again, with dogs, it's every fucking thing.
I bet it is. So it's semi-important, but okay. So body language is very, very important, but it's also something that could be definitely taught. So I use a person's body language, but it's so easy at this point in the game that it's not critical. Like, it's critical if I don't know how to use it, but it's so simple to me to understand body language and neurolinguistics that it's now just a flow, right? It's like, well, how important is reading to education? I mean, no, you got to be. No, it's not. Well, it's the foundation.
Yeah.
But once you get it down, you're just reading.
Well, and at that point, you're essentially taking it for granted the same way you would body language.
Body language.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think people just need to be careful about body language. So I'm going to give it just real quickly. If you want to talk about neurolinguistics and how people are lying, right? Well, they you have this and that, and if I'm over in this direction, I'm probably being pretty accurate. Right. And if I'm continuing to do up here, right, like I might be fabricating. The problem is if I'm talking to a prisoner and I've talked to him he's been talked to, interrogated 5 or 6 times or 5 or 6 weeks. Maybe he was creating their picture to fabricate a lie. But after a while, he's going to start looking over here because that's the story he's remembering. So people can get really tied up on that going, no, man, he was telling the truth. I know this. It's like he's telling the same story that he's remembering that at one time he was creating.
Yeah.
So I would just say be careful with it.
Yeah. Don't rely on it too heavy, in other words.
No.
Yeah. It's cool shit. To me, it'd be really awesome if you did write a book that kind of talks about the intricacies of those things and getting more in the weeds with the psychology and the framework behind interrogations and lying and things of that nature. I think it's pretty neat shit. But anyway, before we wrap it up here, is there anything you'd like to add or talk about?
I created a new way to do interrogations, and it's not because I'm smarter at all. It's because there was interrogation techniques that used to work. The battlefield changed, and we have to change with the battlefield. Any industry, any CEOs that are listening, any managers out there, you tell me an industry that hasn't changed over the last 5 years. And it's not that we are smarter than the people before us, but we have to build a culture that cultivates our subordinates listening to our people, listening to our clients and customers, knowing we have to change. The world's changing. It would be easy to do the things the way we always have. Only when it's critically important do we go, wait a second, let's do things differently. And I'm saying, why don't we have a culture where we embrace the idea of change, not just for the purpose of change, but understanding if the battlefield changes, we have got to change. And I'm just going to say this. I take a lot of credit. I have no problem. Somebody wants to say, man, you take so much credit. I'm like, hey, I take the credit I think I deserve. But the one thing I will say is there's a Delta culture, right? When you walk into that building, they have a standing rule. If you see something that can be done better, you have a responsibility to speak up. And it's not, hey, over here, we have a tip jar. You can write some things and we might read them. Or if you, all right, you got one strike or you have one silver bullet. It's like, no, don't come in here. If you see anything we can do better, you have to speak up. How empowering of a culture that is, right?
Yeah.
If you're the cook or you're the gardener or you're the Chinese Mandarin linguist who've never done an interrogation before, that says, you know what? I didn't try out for this group. I didn't make it. I'm not an operator, but while I'm here, I am one of them and I am part of this family and I have the right to speak up. That's their power.
Yeah.
I don't care they get the baddest dudes and they have the most resources. That's their power.
Well, and it's not specific to rank either, right? It's top to bottom. It's everybody.
They don't know rank.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, if you show up with some rank on, you'll probably be the first one out the door.
Yeah. No, that's fucking great. I love that mentality. It's awesome. I would probably couple it with also don't bitch unless you have a solution, But
so as they say is, if you see something we can do better, you have a responsibility to come to us. Next line is, don't bring us some stupid shit.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear some stupidness.
Yeah.
But come on, man.
Yeah.
We're here to get better. And I always tell people, do role plays in your job. Do this. Do AARs.
Yeah.
People don't want to do AARs. You know who does AARs? JSOC.
Yeah.
If they're willing to do AARs.
It's after action report, you civilian dicks.
It basically says, when we're done with an operation or a mission or a job, let's take a look and see what we did good, bad, and what we can do better.
Yeah.
Oh, are we going to do role plays? Yeah. They're walkthroughs, right? if the best of the best can do them,
Yeah.
come on, who can't do them?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's how you learn is, again, you learn as much from your mistakes as you do your successes, in many ways more.
That's it. That's what I wanted to say.
All right. Fascinating shit. I want to just say thank you again for coming. It's been great having you here. Remarkable story. No less fantastic than I expected it to be, and I appreciate you sharing so much intricate detail with this process and the story. The book is called Mission Blacklist Number 1. Author is Eric Maddox, and again, it highlights everything that we've just talked about, and even more in depth about the hunting down and ultimate capture of Saddam Hussein, who at that time was, I may argue that he was tied for the most wanted man, because Bin Laden, I don't think was any less wanted at that point, but still, such a neat experience to be able to meet you in person and get these details from you sitting here across the desk. I appreciate you sharing.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Origin Labs, our sponsor, want to do another shout out. Also, go to Origin Labs, check out all the products they have. They make Jocko's products, they make boots, they make jeans, jiu-jitsu gis, as well as some other stuff that we'll be looking at down the line here. Teamdog.pet, if you own a dog. My online training, teamdog.pet. Go there, sign up. It's a great dog resource. They have not just the training videos that are pretty all-encompassing, but forums, gear reviews, first aid, canine CPR, medical kits, all the products that I offer. They're all on that site as well. And I encourage you, fuck that, I'm telling you, if you own a dog, or even if you're thinking about getting a dog, go there, sign up, get the shit that you need, and pull your head out of your ass as it relates to training your dog. Last but certainly not least, you, the listener. I sincerely appreciate the continued and unwavering support that you guys just keep fucking showing the Mic Drop podcast and blowing it up on the iTunes top 200 week after week. And every time we drop an episode, it just continues to humble all of us here, with how well you support us and giving us the opportunity to have this platform. So thank you guys. Don't forget to choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.